the village board. Sure. Roll call.
Bell,
Here.
Berto.
Here.
Shampoo. Here. White. Here. Orozco. Here. Warner. Here. And Cox is excused.
I would like to revise the agenda slightly, the order of. I would like to move 8B to after the executive session, as there's some stuff talked about in the executive session that will be pertinent to that.
Or 8A.
Yeah, 8A. My apologies. So would there be a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
So we move it to the end, you're saying,
yes,
I'm making an assumption that a lot of people are here tonight for that topic.
yes.
Okay, so,
There'll be, on 5, I'll further address that.
okay, thank you.
Chase, you gotta shut it. Mosquitoes are coming in. Take it out.
Do I have a motion to,
So moved.
I'll second.
motion by Berto, second by Warner? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approval of the meeting minutes for April 18th.
I had one edit, I didn't see your name, Nate, in the attendance.
It's down a little bit.
Is it? Okay, I just,
Once
okay.
he was sworn in, because I thought the same thing.
Thank you
Yeah.
for catching that. Okay, I went over it a couple times. All right, I had no edits besides that.
Okay, everybody's good with those minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by White, second,
I second that.
second by Shampo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Comments, correspondence, and concerns from the. For item 8B that we moved to the end, we are not going to take public comments at this meeting. This is a preliminary discussion for the board. There will be another meeting that we will likely take public comments on. There's also the similar item coming to Plan Commission for a public hearing next week. It's not exactly the same, but at this time, this is for board discussion. That said, is there anybody who would like to address the board on a non-agenda item?
Can you repeat that?
We are not going to take public correspondence on item 8A. This is for preliminary review. You're not voting on this tonight. This is for board discussion.
Okay,
This will come back to the board. This is the first step.
so you don't want any public input until then?
At this point, no, we don't want public input at this point.
It would have been helpful for a lot of us to know that ahead of time. I mean, I drove 3.5 hours. Thank you.
The village never indicated that.
We're from Chicago, you know.
We never indicated this is a public hearing.
Well.
Is this about an agenda item, Bjorn?
It's a non-agenda item.
Okay,
I would like to make a public comment on the zoning code provisions that may come before the board on the STR issues.
okay.
So. I think. And I'll keep it to that way. So there's 4 issues that I'd like to raise with the zoning code. That's being, zoning code provisions that's being proposed at planning. And on behalf of my parents at their rental house, Shore Drive, there's really 4 issues that are really a non-starter for them. Number 1, there's a parking cap requirement that we're just not gonna be able to comply with as an STR. There's
Bjorn, would this be more appropriate next week at that public hearing?
I don't think so, no. I mean, I think it's good information for the board right now to consider this as planning is considering it down below. So,
Okay,
so parking cap spaces, it's a non-starter. We're not gonna be able to comply with it. It's a kill regulation. Number 2, there's an immediate ban on shared driveways. We have a shared driveway right now. It's not gonna be possible to comply with. And there's a ban on signs for non-conformities, which, I mean, it's not really a provision you typically see in zoning to put a ban on non-conforming matters. So we have a sign we've had there for 30 years and it's just not going to work. And then there's also broader implications, I think, in those proposals that are just beyond the scope of just STRs, but they have implications for non-conformities in general, so you're gonna have to take a really bit hard look at that. So, I mean, on behalf of my parents and the property we have on Bay Shore Drive, we have to say that if these types of regulations are not reduced to substantially the same as Liberty Groves, then we're gonna begin the process of detachment from Sister Bay into Liberty Grove. Because right now, the municipal boundary runs right through our property. And, you know, we can start a detachment proceeding as a contiguous property to Liberty Grove. So I think, you know, that's gonna open the floodgates to the rest of the properties on the water on Sister Bay. Because right now, Liberty Grove has not proposed nearly as a restrictive of an ordinance at this time. And, you know, we're looking at these Liberty Grove proposals and we're thinking, okay, it makes much more sense to reverse annex our property into Liberty Grove if Sister Bay is just gonna out-regulate the rentals out of the market. So, I mean, take a hard look at what Liberty Grove is proposing. I believe they're tomorrow night. And, you know, the big thing I think what we would ask for is to scrap it all, scrap everything you've seen, and adopt one thing that Liberty Grove is proposing, and that's essentially a private cause of action for, you know, like neighboring property owners to address issues with STRs. I think it's a great way to resolve all of this. So that way, if we have some other property owners within the village that have such a big issue with neighboring STRs, then let them do the heavy lifting work instead of adopting this insanely comprehensive regulation that's just designed to shoo us out of the market. So I think that's all I'd like to say, unless my parents want to say anything. I'm the zoning.
I think, you know, I'd like to address Lars Johnson. We own, for those of you that don't know what property he's talking about, we own Island View Cottage and Guest House, and then we purchased Sister Bay Auto, and we took Sister Bay Auto down and we removed the tanks from that property in order to improve that property. That consists of 4 parcels, and 2 of the parcels are in Sister Bay and 2 parcels are in Liberty Grove. It runs right down the middle of our property, almost the middle of our property. And we've owned that property for 24 years. And so now to see all of these actions come forward to this point, and what we're reading and getting emails, thank you, you know, to Julie and Heidi and staff for providing us with access to the wording. The wording is, like my son said, it's a non-starter from a non-conformity basis. We, you know, the grandfather clauses on zoning regulations have long been established. And for us to be able to pass that property on to our children, if we so choose, or if we wanted to sell it out on the open market, you know, the grandfather clause usually runs with the property. And for you to come in now to say to those of us that have owned properties for years and years and years that this can't be done any longer, is a complete non-starter for planning and zoning considerations.
Okay. Any other comments on a non-agenda? Okay, is Dave Lena with us yet?
Not see Dave yet.
Okay, we can come back to him. He does. Sure. Would be 7, Northern Door Sports and Recreation, Rachel Pye, the presentation for us.
Is there a good place to stand, or is this okay?
Good.
Okay. All right, so I just want to kind of go over a brief presentation with you. I'm going to read from here, and if you guys have any questions at the end, feel free to ask. But if you don't know me, my name is Rachel Stolenwerk. I live in Fish Creek. Thanks for giving me the chance to speak to you today. What I'd like to share is an initiative I launched in 2020, Northern Door Sports and Recreation. It was a way to start bringing together some information about various sport leagues, events, and classes that happen throughout Northern Door. It started I greatly value the life skills that are developed through sports participation, and the relationships that get built on teams and with coaches. I'm especially passionate about youth sports, and the opportunities here in Northern Door, and I spend a lot of time figuring out what I can do to help improve the quality of life for families in the area. So my focus this year has been on building Northern Door Sports and Recreation. And we are a service provider. We offer a wide range of services that support sports and recreational facilities, local clubs, coaches, and instructors. At this time, we focus very locally to this area, and we support the leagues and programs that take place within Gibraltar District municipalities. We currently provide registration services for some well-established youth programs such as Northern Athletics, baseball and softball leagues, Peninsula Youth Basketball Club. Our registration platform has also made it easy for community members and parents interested in organizing new leagues or events to do so. This past year, we have assisted with the introduction of a youth ski club at Peninsula State Park. We have youth dance classes, swimming lessons, and in June, we have 5 high schoolers who will be the first students to represent Gibraltar at the USA Clay Target Shooting League's state meet. So there's a lot of stuff that we assist with and help these organizers do. These new offerings were made possible by working collaboratively with both community members and facilities to create the opportunities that kids and families are looking for. We are the consistent and reliable link needed at this time in this county to support these efforts as facility managers, parents, and coaches may come and go. In front of you is a copy of the program, the first program guide that we published this March. This is a very visual result of the collaborative approach we take to providing value to families and individuals in the area. And as I mentioned, we offer a wide range of services to help facilities and programmers launch and organize their offerings. This includes anything from storing a flyer online, scheduling leagues, managing registrations and waivers, booking facility reservations, point of sale payments, and processing credit cards. I see the growth that is attracting families specifically to Sister Bay. And with growth comes the need to find efficient, reliable, and cost-effective solutions to manage the services and facilities that you offer your residents and visitors. So part of planning for future investments in your sports complex or other areas of activity, it includes planning for your operations. How do people book court time? How do you work with instructors who want to teach skating lessons? How do people sign up for village-sponsored leagues? Are you maximizing facility sponsorship opportunities? These are all things that we can assist with, and I'd like you to consider how Northern Door Sports and Recreation can help you manage some of these workflows. In doing so, provide a seamless way for programmers to plan activities at your facilities and for residents to enjoy the activity infrastructure that you have for them here. So a lot of that I know is in the future as you think through this and maybe take a look at some of the other resources I've provided with you. But there is something that I do want to ask you today. So this program guide is available online. It aligns with the online registration portal that we have, where people actually go and sign up for a lot of the youth leagues and a lot of the other classes that we have. And so what I would like the village to do is add a link to our portal page, either on your Parks and Recreation page of the website or another appropriate page as you, I know, are making improvements to the site and whatnot. In doing so and adding that link, you'll be able to draw residents to the online resource, which ultimately helps them find more information about the different sport leagues, events, and classes that are going on throughout the area. So that's my brief presentation. And you're happy to keep the program guides. I hope you take a look at them and find out what's going on for upcoming summer stuff. And then if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Well, thank you so much for presenting and for being an asset to the community. Are you doing the same presentation to other municipalities?
Yeah, so my plan is to talk to each one, and however we can best serve the municipality, we want to do that. Everybody is a little bit different in what they need. Even some of the program options in this guide, don't utilize any of our services, but they're something that youth or families can participate in. So we want them in the guide. So there's a whole host of ways that we can support either a facility, like a sports complex, or an individual, like a coach or an instructor. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
you.
All right, on to eight B, recreating the room tax ordinance. Really?
Okay, so the room tax ordinance is something that we've had for quite a while, and just as the staff memo explains. When we adopted the revised one, we did so as part of an intergovernmental agreement, so it didn't get actually put in the code book itself. So I did reach out to the tourism zone to get a copy of the template, formatted it to fit the way we do our code with the right section numbers, etc. So this is really just a cleanup ordinance that's before you. The current code, which like I said, was never changed, did have the information about the premier resort area tax information in there. So that was just added to the back of the template, so to speak, but there has been no other substantial changes. It's really just formatting and adopting a template, current template.
Okay, any questions?
My only question, I guess we're not debating if we're going to have this tax, but it seems like we're putting out there to have restrictions on tourists. So this 8%, 50% of that, I believe, is going to marketing to draw more tourists to our communities. So I feel like there's.
I actually asked a question between the last time, so I had a conversation with Allison this afternoon, and she asked me about this. And I actually reached out to Dave Elliott, who had been instrumental in passing the room tax, and I said, Dave, what about this 51% that's going for marketing? He said, it's not really 51% that's going for marketing. The destination Door County is returning more and more of that to the municipalities year over year. It's really closer to 30-some-odd%, but I do think it'd be a good idea to get Julie Gilbert here so she could explain to us what they're doing, because that was my 5-minute short conversation. I did not have a good answer for you.
Julie's here.
Oh, she is?
It's online.
Could we?
Julie, are you able to hear us? Do you want to comment on the room tax?
Yeah, can you just repeat your question again? I'm sorry.
Awesome.
Yes, and hey, Julie, I guess my question is, I feel like we have an adequate number of tourists here, and do we need to keep advertising and spending 51% on billboards outside of Chicago and so forth to encourage more tourism? Are we kind of good with it now?
You know, it's consideration set, and if you do entirely pull out all of your marketing, then you lose the visitation, which then you lose the lodging tax dollars that does contribute to the economy. But it's not 51%. And Nate, I would really like to have the opportunity to come up and walk through the strategic plan, really go through to show what we're doing in the marketing space, as well as the reinvestment back into the community.
I think that would be great.
That would be great.
So would I reach out to Julie and find a date that would be good for you all? Because that would be really fantastic for us to be able to do that.
Let's look at either June or July meeting. I think that we might, I was talking to Michelle about coming here for June. That might be too much for one meeting, but in short order, we can get you up here.
Oh, that would be great. And I appreciate the opportunity. I really appreciate the questions. And it, you know, working together, we can always get better. And we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Just a comment on that too. Those numbers that you see in there are the result of an intergovernmental agreement we signed a couple of years ago. When the commission was formed, all of the municipalities that were going to be part of the Tourism Zone Commission had to sign an intergovernmental agreement and agree to the same numbers. That's where those come from.
So on the staff report, my question is in the second paragraph, the other reason for recreating this ordinance is that a portion
of it was not being followed by the hotels, motels, and other short-term rentals. Specifically, they were to annually notify the clerk when their first rental of the season was booked. Does that apply to hotels and motels?
Yeah.
Okay, that needs to be stricken because that's ridiculous.
Yeah, the whole, so in the template you had before, that whole section was taken out
Okay,
because.
then I missed that part.
Yeah, because the
Okay.
hotel motels aren't doing it, and then the short-term rental ordinance. You know, if you went with the 7-day, 180, they'd have to do it anyway, so it'd kind of be duplicating it anyway.
Okay. Then I have another question.
Yes.
On page 55. G. The room tax rate adjustment, which. The exemption does not apply to reservations made before the original adoption of this ordinance, the date of which was August 17th, 2021, which are. Not binding contracts, et cetera, et cetera. Why do we still have that in there? That date is come and gone.
It has come and gone, when we,
Part of the template?
it's part of the template, so all the ordinances read the same. We could take it out.
I would like to take it out because it's ridiculous.
Any other questions?
I'm still scrolling. Page 56. B5. It's asking for the driver's license number and or federal employer identification number of the owner of the lodging business. I don't know how we would pass that when that is something that is up for discussion later this evening about not having corporate entities own single family homes.
Well, so this is what the tourism zone is gonna look for, right? So, if the tourism, like a hotel motel, they're probably gonna have a PIN number. A individual, if they're not operating it as a business, they would just have the driver's license. So
Okay,
if we'd want that to stay.
okay. Those were all my questions. Thank you.
Then I will make a motion that we approve ordinance 2023-05, regrading the room tax ordinance
With the amendment to 55G.
with the amendment to 55G.
I will second.
Motion by Bell, second by White. All those in favor?
I,
Opposed? Okay. All right, then 9A.
Okay, so what we have in front of us, this has not been approved by Gibraltar yet. We've had discussions, so we're kind of like the first step in this process, but. I've been in communication with some of the neighboring jurisdictions about law enforcement. Throwing around some ideas, you know, is it time for Village of Sister Bay to have law enforcement? Should we be working on a northern door unit? And in those conversations, Gibraltar said, you know, if you want to try it for a while, we're willing to let our chief work 2 hours overtime a day to help Sister Bay out and see how it goes. So what this agreement would do is just during the summer months, the police chief would help us out for 2 hours a day to see how it goes. We do know, as you've seen in some of the other documentation, the sheriff calls have really increased. They're still gonna respond, they still will come, but this is an added layer of enforcement. The Gibraltar police officer right now, when I was talking to him, he said, yeah, it's just sometimes he can get to those emergencies quicker than the sheriff, so it works out really well. Sometimes he's even covered stuff here that the sheriff hasn't been able to get to right away. So this is just an intergovernmental agreement for the summer months, for $10,000 to have temporary law enforcement. And like I said, it would still need, the agreement would actually still need to be approved by the village of, the town of Gibraltar.
Do we need this? What are the hours we would be looking at?
So he said that, we talked about that, and It would vary, but we recently passed no parking, or we recently passed a no parking ordinance in December, which says no overnight parking, no parking over the line. There is no one to enforce that right now. I mean, I can get out there. I think Denise, you have a book to issue tickets, but the reality is nobody's out there ticketing them at night, or there's just not the time to do it. And then the other part is there is
overnight parking,
village streets. So that was passed in December. And then the other part is, they can do decibel reads. We've had some issues with noise. We do have calls regarding, late night hours. Gibraltar doesn't have an issue with bars and the same issues that Sister Bay has. So it's, when they can't be in Gibraltar, it works to be in Sister Bay. But our main needs are later at night, or policing the parking situation.
parking situation worries me.
Well, that was adopted in December, so that one's on the books unless somebody takes it off the books. That was adopted. We're actually having signs made to go out there and mark everything, certain streets, no parking over the line, things of that nature.
I think we do need this. We do, it's overdue. Part-time constable, the summer season, so many more people here, so much more stuff going on, so much more drinking. It might even help deal with, the short-term rental people that are not going by the rules with fireworks and stuff like that, so I'm definitely for it.
Thanks.
I just wanted to give a little bit of background, for everybody that's new. There has been a parking, overnight parking problems in the village for quite some time, and specifically, or where it's most noticeable, is like down at the marina. And you would see this, and I look at that every single day, and so I was one of the people who would say, why are these people allowed to park here for an entire week? Not in a parking lot somewhere, they're taking up parking from other people because they have gone out on their boat and pretty much, there's no nice way to say it, too lazy to go park where they should and open up all of that parking to other people who are partaking in the shops, the restaurants, whatever else downtown Sister Bay. So that was part of the reason that we implemented this, that we needed some, if we didn't have an ordinance, we couldn't do anything about it. And so it's just trying to, some people say that there is a parking problem, some other people say it's a perception of a parking problem in the village. But when somebody occupies a space for days on end that simply aren't here, makes no sense.
And that's helpful context. I think I was more worried about, because there are drinking establishments, if you park your car and have too many drinks.
Right, no, we talked about that,
Okay.
but that was a good thing.
Okay,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
I want people to stay parked there.
Yes.
So
But
I,
other people would say there's a transportation problem.
right, exactly. How are we addressing that?
So
Okay.
Sarah, just,
Yeah.
in that ordinance that was adopted, there is a provision for people that drink too much,
Okay,
that they don't get ticketed or
Okay.
towed.
thank you.
They get like a warning, and then it has to be gone like the next day.
Okay, that's perfect, thank you.
I'm just hearing parking issues here to justify having the expense of having a full-time law enforcement presence in Sister Bay. I don't think that's enough justification for this. I'd like to hear about other crime rates that are not parking issues here. That's just my thought.
I don't know that it's so much about crime per se. I think it's about us testing the waters for a small amount of money, see how it works. Do we want to move forward with something more than, a couple of hours a day, something more part-time, or even working into a full-time position and budgeting for that in the future? whoever we hire will enforce all of the village's ordinances. The Door County Sheriff's Department does not do that at all. So whether it's fireworks, parking, dogs in areas that they shouldn't be, or unleashed dogs. It's a variety of things that the Sheriff's Department simply says, it's not a county ordinance, too bad, so sad. So,
That's right, they only enforce state and if there's a county one, so we're up to we're on our own with municipal ordinances. And we have seen an increase in crime, I mean, it's not just the parking, when you look at those numbers that were in the document that showed how they increased, those are not parking,
Were those crimes or were those calls? So there's an important
I'm sorry,
distinction between the two.
those are calls, those are not, but they're not parking, they're ones that they responded to, as you saw it, and I have the list of what they are, you can see what they, are they a burglary or abuse or a fight or drunk driver or what is it? But
and
there,
we get
there
that
is an-
quarterly.
Yeah.
We will get a quarterly report from the Sheriff's Department on all the calls in Sister Bay, the address that it was at, and what the call in nature, in general terms was, without giving, too many specifics. So you will see that coming in the near future.
And I saw the 2017 numbers were very similar to 2022,
I think 2018, yeah, there was,
2018.
Yeah.
Seemed like one of those years it's often the high. And then it went down and then seemed to creep back up. Does this also include people who call for health reasons and need an ambulance? Like older folks?
Yes.
Could these be just normal people having strokes?
Anybody with any emergency, and then the 911 makes the decision of who they're dispatching, so a lot of times our fire chief goes up to those.
So it could just be we have a lot of elderly people and not a lot of crime.
It could be when you look at the numbers, you're seeing crime.
Okay.
The other thing is the response time that the Door County Sheriff's Department has to respond to us up here sometimes is not as fast as you would like them to be. So if we have presence right here in the village, it's gonna be quicker, faster, help sooner. It's all good.
well, this would be a presence in the village for 2 hours a day.
Right.
For how
Yeah.
many days a week?
5.
5 days a week?
And
So we'd have 5 hours where there would be, or 10 hours.
Better than nothing.
And is that like 10 p.m. to midnight or something, or you don't know yet?
We don't know yet, we have to work that out,
How
because
does
it's one person.
How does this tie to, because there is there are more police, there's a higher police presence now than there were 6 months ago, right? There's been an increase across the county. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Is there a correlation to, are we working with the county on any of this?
Yeah, so what happened, the county was not fully staffed for a while, and
Okay.
they're staffed now, so that's why you're seeing
The
more,
presence?
the more presence. We're fortunate that one of the deputies, sheriff deputies, actually lives in Sister Bay. So we see him driving around sometimes too.
I am not convinced that we need this at this point. I don't think that there's real crime happening. I think that there's some additional calls. I mean, if you go through those call logs every quarter, there's not a lot of serious stuff happening there.
Mhm.
And at some point we might need this, but I don't think the time is now.
Nate, I think we have had constables in the past as well.
We also had a
Way
pilot
like a long
program.
time ago, and that was always in a very
think
nice
it was
service for
Under the,
Sister Bay.
yeah, under the Clinton administration, if I remember correctly.
5 years.
We had a grant that the federal government paid for. And, we had, people hired from the Door County Sheriff's Department that would patrol only Sister Bay. And after 5 years, the money went away and we did not continue, to fund that project. But it was really great. Their presence was known. They got a good look at the community. They popped into businesses. The owners knew who the deputies were. There was good rapport. you know, are things horribly bad that we need somebody for a couple of hours a day? No, but I think for a small amount of money, we can see how it all pans out.
I mean, the way I agree with you, Nate. I'm not convinced yet, but I would be willing to try something, but like, I would match it up towards our data. So Friday nights and Saturday nights, I would say, I would not, I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around the data also, kind of, Ally, to your point. It was at 519, I think, were the call volumes in 2018, and now we're at 523. So there's no justification from a volume standpoint to me, but if we can look at the data and say there are certain times we're seeing more calls that we're not able to respond to from a safety standpoint, I can maybe get around that. I'm just having a hard time saying 2 hours a day, we're gonna pay for an officer.
I think the same, I would be more willing to say Fall Fest weekend, let's get an extra.
Yeah.
4th of July, 2 weeks surrounding 4th of July, like consolidate when we have people setting off fireworks all the time, and
5
things
days a
like-
week right now, to
Done.
me, does not really.
yeah,
seem
just enforcing
necessary.
petty crimes. I don't know if a dog's off a leash. I don't know.
I think you do have to think though, if that's the route you wanna go, we have to think about how we're gonna enforce the village ordinances. So, yeah. Open to ideas on.
Would Gibraltar be open to something shorter? I mean, would they be open to a shorter term than this? Could we just do it for July?
Well, you'd still only get 2 hours a day. I mean, the officer, he's doing it in overtime. So, it's not like he's gonna come here and do 8 hours a day in July. He has a job.
I understand.
Yeah, I feel like that's my issue is like, because they have 2 hours a day, we're gonna like Jimmy rig it, try to make it work instead of saying, well, what are we actually trying to address? I think what we would need, if we need this, we would need it around certain holiday times when we know that there's more people here. That's where I'm having some reservation.
So was this an all or nothing sort of thing from your conversations with Gibraltar?
Yeah, I mean, they're not gonna give us their police chief for a half a day or for 2 weeks or on a holiday. It's their employee. They were willing to help us out so our people could have that sense of security, get some of the, have the presence out there so people know there's a police officer watching, address, some of the new parking ordinance, try and, address some of them so people know that there's somebody watching that thing.
What do you think the shortest term that Gibraltar would find acceptable?
Well, no more than 2 hours a day, it's his.
I'm just saying, like for a month, for 2 months, for 90 days, like what sort of. Let's gather some data, to Sarah's point, like, let's see what this does, and if it does good stuff, let's do it, if it doesn't make a difference, then why are we doing it?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. I mean, we can propose a different time. I will say the other thing too that concerns me is the vandalism that we've had. Not a lot of it by any means, but last year we had windows broken in at Village Hall. This year we had somebody hit the wall and break apart the wall at our offices. So I mean, there's little things that go on. Like I said, it's really just to have that presence there so people know they're being watched, or for some that they feel secure.
The other thing too is like safety. I know it's only gonna be 2 hours in the evening, but there's speeding is going on like crazy in our private residential areas. No one's watching the speeding limit and there's no police presence. Maybe that would help a little. Especially at night when all the bars are open and they're out drinking. I just think it's only a good thing.
We don't even know though what 2 hours of the day this police presence would be available for, so that, I mean, too many things can happen in the span of 12 hours in the day. If they're only available for a time of day where it's just a more quieter time, then like speeding, drinking at night, then I don't see how to justify the presence for just the 2 hours, 5 days a week.
Yeah, like what are we measuring their success? Like, how do we know they've been successful? I
They're
think
very
that's my-
successful in Gibraltar. Lots of speeding tickets. They're there, Johnny on the spot when you have an emergency. It's nice to have that local presence right there when you need them.
But that's for 2 hours a day or they're.
No, that's,
they're
I don't know, I
full-time.
think
They have
it's
a
probably
full-time,
full-time, which would even be better.
Compared to just 2
Yeah.
hours here.
I think that perhaps speeding tickets isn't a great metric to measure that by. You know, just simply issuing.
It's a
speeding
safety
tickets.
issue.
Still, if your goal is to issue speeding tickets, that you're not going to, in my opinion, you're not gonna have a good outcome from law enforcement, because you're typically gonna build resentment. I'm just saying, if we're going to have a metric that we're gonna measure it by, I don't think it
That's
should be
just
by.
one of the components of what this.
Sure, and I'm saying.
I guess
when
that's worth it, like-
We set that up, let's figure out what it is we wanna measure, what our goal is, let's set our goal and work towards that.
Which would be what's the data telling us?
Exactly.
I mean, drunk driving, that's probably something we could measure. But
We
then,
don't have any data right now on enforcing the village ordinances.
okay, that's a good point. So part of this ask is so that we can start doing that as way.
Right, and I think we even talked. I don't know if we've talked here before, or it was just a conversation that Julie and I had. Probably with citations that would be written, we could probably pay for his wages out of the citations. Could be a wash.
Yeah, we talked about that at parks, you know,
Oh,
it
at
depends
parks,
how
okay.
many tickets. I mean, that's not why, of course, you have him, but it does help offset it.
I would say our desired outcome should be increased safety. You know, it shouldn't be a matter of generating revenue. That should be kind of a moot point.
Do you have data from when you had a devoted officer for 5 years instead of just 2 hours a day of what the differences were when you had 5 years? I mean, I don't know how you're gonna judge a new police officer in 3 months when you've had him for 5 years, and you don't know what the benefits are from that.
I mean, when was the, how long ago was that?
At the Clinton
So you're
administration,
looking
30 years.
yeah,
long time.
so is that even meaningful data?
No,
Because of things have changed since then and the demographics have changed, so it's a great question.
I mean, I'd love for us to have a idea of what we would want them to measure and what success would look like. And what those 2 hours a day would look like. Personally, I would like just a little bit more data and context around this. But that's one opinion.
I guess I could, there's been issues with parking tickets that have been issued by the village in the past. And my understanding is they frequently are not paid. Is that accurate?
That's right, a lot of people who in the past, I know tickets have been issued, but they haven't been forwarded onto the court, so people ignore them. If you forward them onto the court, then of course, you don't do anything, the court follows up with it.
Is that because they weren't issued by a police officer, or is that just because we didn't?
I think it's just, people didn't know how, or they don't have time, I mean. Is it really the responsibility of a shop owner to issue parking tickets? I don't think it is. You know, so they're doing their best to try and help out with the situation, but reality is you need to do, if you want to address parking, you have to have ways to address it. Last summer, when the board passed the ordinance, the understanding was we're gonna have this ordinance, it's gonna be enforced, and this is like the logical next step to that, right? I'll be honest with you, if you think I'm gonna sit here 24 hours a day and issue parking tickets, I'm not gonna do it. You know, so who's gonna do it? I mean, if you're not gonna have somebody, just remove the ordinance from the books then, because you have no one to enforce it.
I guess a question I would have, one second, is how, if these aren't regular hours, how are we gonna be able to enforce that 24-hour parking maximum? Because if you don't have them come look one day and then come back the next day to check.
We can certainly hire 2 or 3 officers, you know, to do all of that. This is just to see how it goes. Clearly, he's not gonna be able to enforce all of that. I mean, he can chalk the tires and see if they're still there the next day.
So, I mean, if that was one of the reasons for it, I was just trying to figure out how that would be the case.
But I think what he's gonna do is he's gonna catch the smaller things, or if he does think somebody's been there a while, he'll chalk them, see if they're still there. But again, we're at Gibraltar's will, so when he can come here, he's willing to help us out to try and, like I said, let people know that presence is there and to try and help us.
Andrew?
Well, if we're talking about nuisance problems such as like parking being a problem, I know, so I own it, well, used to own. But I rent a Country Walk, and anytime that we've had a car parked there for, say 48 hours or more, I simply call the sheriff's department, and they're there within 10 minutes. And we address it right then, he's able to contact the owner of the car, and we figure out whether it's somebody who's just left their car there for a few days, or if it's actually a problem. It's resolved within 30 minutes. So if this is really a parking problem, and it's consistent, what about building coalition with the sheriff's department, and they can come through whatever it's weekends or whatever it may be, but working with them instead of hiring somebody to actually, you know, be on payroll, to come through and actually do this on a day-to-day, all-day basis, or in this instance, 2 hours a day, whatever random time during the day. You know, work with a correlation with what you already have in place.
So I can answer that question for the board. We do call the sheriff's office. And if the property is not signed, they cannot issue a citation or give somebody out of the day.
So I think this would be valid if we could have them for the middle of, nighttime hours, but I don't think somebody wants to spend 5 nights a week, every night in Sister Bay. I don't think we need more security personally during the daytime. I feel very safe. I feel safe walking at night. I feel very safe in our community. I think these acts of vandalism and other things that happen are, I don't know how the policeman is going to catch that person. They're just going to happen. I think we need a camera if we are worried about some personal or some village property. I don't see how 2 hours is going to catch people who are doing things, unless we could guarantee that person, is at nighttime, bar time, 2 to 4 a.m., 1 to 3 a.m., 12 to 2, which I don't think this person's gonna do.
I think there's some merit, as I'm thinking about this, of having a presence so it is seen. And that may be enough to deter it, but I think where this is really struggling with this is not knowing when the time is. You get 2 hours when we decide you're gonna get 2 hours. And without knowing that, it's really hard to say that this is gonna have an impact or not. Because and how much is Gibraltar gonna be committed to this? I mean, we're getting their scraps. That's really what it comes down to, that ultimately, that person works for the town of Gibraltar, the town of Gibraltar is gonna be the first priority, as it should be.
So why don't we table it and see if we can't get that information? And maybe it's not the same 2 hours, every day. That some days it's in the afternoon, sometimes it's in the evening, sometimes it's before he starts his shift in Fish Creek. So let's see if we can get what those time slots would be, or does he take a break? Is there an option that he takes a break from Gibraltar in the middle of the day, comes to Sister Bay for a couple of hours and goes back? And it's just, because I don't know that we'd want it necessarily always at the same time. I think that they need to be out in the community and making a presence at different times of the day, and different things will happen at different times of the day. So if we can get that information on what the time slots would be, what are the options, what the range is, and we bring it back.
I think the other question I would have is what village ordinances. I mean, I understand, well, of course, all the village ordinances, but there's clearly going to be, a top 10 or top 20 ordinances that we're gonna be looking for them to inspect. We're not gonna expect this person to know the village code like you do, Denise. That's not realistic.
Well, that would be the next phase of it. If you agree to it, then you're gonna have to amend the ordinance for those ordinances that are to be enforced by the administrator or their designee, or specifically by them, sir. It basically is your noise, your fireworks, your parking. Remember the name of that chapter, the streets chapter is pretty much what an officer would enforce. Nuisance and streets, those two chapters.
That'd be, when we get that other back to include that, I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure how long the offer will stand because. You know, if we, let's just say, perfect world, this was approved next month, you're already looking at mid-June, so I don't know if it would. And then, you know, the next month, if you have your ordinances that they approve, I mean. I don't know if it's worth it for 2 months, I don't know if he'd be willing to do it for 2 months. Would Gibraltar be willing to go through all of that work? Because they were trying to help us, for 2 months, but we can ask.
I think we need some more information before we commit.
So I'll make a motion to postpone until next month.
Second.
Motion by Berto, second by Shampo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item 9B, agreement for ball field use by the Sister Bay Bay.
Okay, this was brought to Parks Committee, apparently with Sister Bay Ball or Sister Bay Bays. They use our ball field routinely. It's every Saturday and then every Saturday morning and then Sunday for games and it goes from May until I think September. But we've never had an agreement with them to protect their investments or so we know what our role is. So this agreement was put together with the Bays. We went back and forth with them. It was presented to the Parks Committee. So this is coming out of Parks on what they recommend for the agreement and how it should read.
So moved.
Second by Warner. All those in favor?
Aye.
See carries. 9C, agreement for facilities planning service.
Okay, so the previous board had authorized an RFP for facilities planning services to find out where, you know, where you're gonna put the admin building, where you're gonna put the parks building, what size is it, how much space do you need, et cetera. And hopefully everybody has followed that process, so I'm not gonna reiterate it, but if you want more information, let me know. Anyways, the Parks Committee, they did the RFP. They had several responses, I think it was like 7. They narrowed it down to 2 that they did interviews with. And the one that they are recommending we go with is Ayers Associates. Have a draft agreement in front of you. They are giving us some minor changes, so whatever we do, we'd want to have Randy review it, you know, before it's actually signed. But it is to provide the planning services. The project is supposed to take about 90 days and the cost is $93,500.
So Randy has not reviewed this document that we're looking at yet.
He has.
Oh, yeah.
He has, because he added one thing at the end.
Okay.
So, but Ayers said, you know, we're gonna have some changes, and so I'm like, that's fine, just give it to me, we'll have Randy review it, it's just legalese on their part.
Okay.
So the 93,500 is budgeted. It was budgeted last year for the parks property, just to basically raise the building at that time. So that money is being used to fund the project.
So is this really just site planning? Is that what this proposal is?
It is to look at all of the properties and
Okay.
facilities, make recommendations on where they should be located or how they should be developed. And then also to give us conceptual plans on what size building it would be, what the lot would look like, what the parking would look like, things like that.
Including property that we don't own.
Okay, great.
Because there are some things that may have to be tied together and the property that the village currently owns may or may not be conducive, so it's a little bit of a wider swath. For them to figure out, you know, what we have, will it work, and if it doesn't, where do we look from there?
Okay. Okay. And this is just specific to Sister Bay Village, nothing with Liberty Grove. Okay.
I'll move to approve.
Second by Orozco, all those in favor?
Aye.
Sale of surplus property.
Okay, we had an old swim platform, we had a lot of issues with it, we made sure that we, this was talked about last year in the, talked about last year in the budgeting process, so we bought a new swim rack. And now we wanna sell the old one. Our policy says that, it has to be approved by committee and then the board. And so this was discussed back at budget time, saying we'd buy the new one, get rid of the old one. We actually have the new one, so now it's time to physically get rid of the old one and sell it.
Moved. Second.
By White, second by Orozco, all those in favor?
Aye.
And I actually skipped over 90.
Yeah.
So.
Sure, gave Dan a hard time.
Sure, so 90 is a. The board had authorized went out for bid for a road project. We budgeted for a road project. From basically the lane over here to the east, all the way to Woodcrest. And the board wanted sidewalks as part of that project, sidewalks and basically rebuilding the road or that part of the road. It's a very short segment, it's 990 feet in length. When this project was first discussed, Dan had estimated it at about 189,000 based on other road projects. But because of costs and the fact that a subcontractor is gonna have to run, or that subcontractors are gonna have to run it all the way up here for just 990 feet, the bid is now pretty much double. You can say it's $377,000. So we have some choices to make. We could use the Pratt funds, which really means we're draining the budget. Means other projects, if they say right on target, we're okay, but then we're not gonna be able to do any next year. We can cancel it, we can revise it, take the sidewalks out and just do like a mill and pave on it. Or we could delay the project another year and hope the cost comes down, or hope that it can be incorporated into another project that is being bid to try and get that price.
That was gonna be my question. We did and some of them, I think South Highland right now is in the process of being redone. So can we incorporate that next year into whatever else,
Good.
Dan proposes and hopefully get a better price because they'd be doing multiple roads?
We definitely can, because we're bidding, in fall, we're gonna bid the Mill Road on the other side of 42. So we could put them together and then hopefully get a lower price, if we want to keep it with sidewalks. Otherwise, like I said, we could mill and pave it now and it wouldn't be an issue. We'd be able to stay in budget for that if we just mill and pave. But there would not be sidewalks there.
Right. So I guess I would make a motion that we postpone this until fall and incorporate it into the bidding process of the other end of mill.
A second.
Motion by Bertle, second by White, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carries.
Is Dan listening? Dan may have something to add.
No, that, we certainly can, having those two projects together, possibly improve. The only thing I would say, do we want to get an alternate bid for just a mill and pave, and then we do a line, on the sidewalk or on the side of the road, just to give you those two prices to look at for next year. I can put in alternate bid, just mill and pave.
Can it just wait 12 months?
I think the only thing that's a little bit of concern is because like the fire trucks go out there and it is a little bit of a rough shape. So I think that's the concern about waiting, but
Correct.
at the same point, we're gonna have this for a while, so, and it's been going on this long.
Right.
Is it going to be an issue, that much of an issue over the next 12 months? I
I
certainly
mean,
don't.
we know we have a lot of bad roads that we're trying to chip away at, and I just think it's better if you can do something all in one fell swoop. It's just much more seamless, and I think your project is better.
I think Tasha. like to say
Yeah,
something?
the issue, with pushing this off is that eventually with the projects you have lined up, you will run into an issue with funds and how much we have in order to do the projects that we need to do. The Mill Road project is likely to wipe out the entire fund.
Which Mill Road? This
You know,
Mill Road.
there should be enough for one or two other projects, but it will mean postponing other things. I'm sorry, Nate, I didn't catch it all what you were saying.
You're saying the Mill Road project, you're saying this Mill Road project, like the one by the
No.
fire station on the other side?
The Mill Road west of the highway will wipe out the fund.
By the beach.
Yeah, that's gonna be a more expensive project, so it just means that we are going to push some other things down the road probably, or have to come up with alternative funding sources for projects.
But didn't you just say that it was already slated to be bid out this fall?
The Mill Road West is to be bid in fall.
Yes.
Yep, so we can bid Mill Road in fall, and we could do this as a mill and pave. If you want to do this as a full with sidewalks and everything, it means that, and we can do those two things, it means that something else is going to get pushed. Whether it's Country Lane gets
No,
pushed
sidewalks are
or
gonna
the
go up.
highway.
There's some confusion.
Yeah, Tasha, so what we're talking about is not doing this portion on the east side by the fire station. Deferring that to when we do the other request for bids for the
Yep.
west side of the highway.
Yeah,
And
what
doing
I'm
that all
saying
as
is-
one project, hopefully, but you're saying that in total, if we do that project next year, to wipe out the fund?
What I'm saying is you can bid those two projects together, right? I don't think the price is going to come down so much that it's going to have a great savings impact.
I would agree.
If you do those two projects together, those projects will essentially wipe out that fund. I think you will have enough for one more road project in there, maybe, and that's it, and it will be empty. And that's fine. That's what the money is for, is to do road projects. But that means something else gets pushed off. We wait through 2025 until we have funds again to do more road projects.
Wouldn't it be wiped out whether we use the 337,000 now and do that next year? It would be wiped out either way.
If you mill and pave, it won't be.
Mill and pave meaning no sidewalks.
Right. So it's up to you. I'm just giving you the picture of what's gonna happen.
Aren't we trying to create sidewalks?
Yes, we should have sidewalks.
I mean, that's an important connection for the sports
Right.
complex. And you know what, if it comes back next fall, then let's address it then, and then if we have to suck it up and do a mill and pave. Okay, but let's be optimistic that we're gonna get better numbers back and deal with that next fall.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you, Tasha. Okay, and on to 9F, is that you, Heidi?
Yeah, so I don't see Anna on the phone, as you may or may not be aware, the mobile gas station is being sold. Should be closing tomorrow on that property sale, so Anna would like to surrender her liquor license and tobacco license to give the new owner an opportunity to apply for those licenses. This would be a conditional surrender contingent on the actual closing of the sale, which I will need to verify with the title.
So you need a motion for us to accept the surrender?
Yes, please.
I will make the motion that we accept the surrender of the liquor and tobacco license.
Second.
Second by Shampoo, all those in favor?
Okay.
Hey. Liquor license request.
Now, he's here. Mr. Rana is here, the new owner of the, will be the new owner of the Sister Bay mobile gas station, now to be known as Sister Bay Petrol. He's applied for the same liquor license that the mobile station had, Class A beer and wine. This is a prorated license because there's only a month and a half remaining in this license year. So he has paid all of the fees, submitted all of the necessary paperwork, provided me with everything that I need. A fire inspection has been requested, and excuse me. This would again be a motion to approve contingent on the actual purchase of the property to be verified at closing.
I'll make a motion. What?
So I called Heidi on this because on page 104, he had answered no to the question number 6, but that was not the correct answer. And on number 9, the date that is corporation was registered was not filled in. And I'd also asked Heidi if she had filled in other sections of this, because you could tell that there was very different handwriting, and it looked like Heidi's handwriting. So she did say that she had documentation that the corporation was registered on March 16th, 2022, even though it wasn't filled in here. And he did take the responsible beverage server course, and she has a copy of that certificate. But I just, beyond that, should staff be filling out forms that are incomplete? No offense, Heidi.
That's fine. I did it with him standing right there.
I
think it's helpful to be helpful to people who don't necessarily know how to fill out all of that forms that government entities provide.
I think it'd be a matter of if she was doing it on her own, I think that would be a problem. But if we're doing it in the direction, it's a convenience thing. And if people need guidance, I mean, this can be very daunting. Coming in front of a government body, it's for.
Yeah, you wanna make sure you fill out the correct, the correct information that you need, so.
Yeah, I mean, I
Need guidance, well, as long as he was present.
Under planning and zoning, we would not ever fill that out. Because there are court cases out there where, the judge has said, well, is this your writing? No, that's her writing. So the judges said, I'm sorry. Well, this guy did not attest to this. This isn't his writing. So, I don't know liquor license laws well enough, but I'm planning and zoning we would not.
Okay.
Well, I mean, aren't they signing the document with the information is
As long
down?
as they sign it, yeah, and you gotta remember, over 50% of the population are senior citizens. So it's not uncommon where people ask Heidi for their help.
Oh, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I just think it should all be in their handwriting. That's all.
I can see your concern, but I think to Allison's point, if we can be a little bit helpful there, as long as we're. I believe in Heidi's judgment. She knows when to draw the line on being helpful. Okay. Did we have a motion on that?
Motion.
Motion by Orozco,
Second.
second by White. All those in favor?
I'm sorry, those are to approve, right? Those motions are to approve.
Yes.
And then following is a tobacco license a request from the same party. Again, this is a program, this is not a prorated fee. It's the full $10 tobacco license fee was paid for the remainder of this license year. And again, it's contingent on closing of the property sale.
I have a question.
Yep.
Do we have any flexibility on how much those fees are? Because I've always, for years, I've said, we're not charging $20 for a fee, we're losing money.
Not for tobacco.
That's that.
I paid more for a lake dog license. So I think it's ridiculous.
It costs money to touch money. Okay,
You can increase some of your other liquor fees, but not,
Did we vote?
not yet.
so motion,
I'll move to approve.
motion by Warner,
Sorry, I read 9H.
We're approving
Yeah,
the
that's
tobacco
okay.
license for Rana Incorporated.
second by Roscoe. All those in favor? Carries. 9I, tobacco license request, Quad's Kitchen.
So as you may recall, last month, Anna Meester came to the board asking for a liquor license at Quad's Kitchen, the cafe she will be opening at Country Walk Drive. And now she is requesting a tobacco license for that establishment as well. There's nothing that says she can't have one.
So moved.
Is So it's a restaurant with a tobacco license?
Yeah, because she has retail sales, she can offer tobacco for sale. Just can't be,
It's a coffee shop, right?
yeah.
And they're selling liquor and tobacco. A coffee shop,
Well, not the hard liquor, just the beer and wine.
okay.
Motion by Berto, second by Roscoe. All those in favor? Aye.
I have a question about this. Do we have an ordinance around cigarette and tobacco products? In Twister Bay? Just curious.
Follow the state statutes.
It's all state, okay, thanks.
9J, liquor license request, convenience juice ribbon. Sarah's accusing herself and going to the audience.
So this request is for a prorated wine license for the restaurant to be established at 2450 South Bay Shore Drive, June's Juicery. They're in the progress of getting that building converted, so they are not anticipating opening before June 1st, which is the date of this request. But again, they need to finish up the construction, pass all of their inspections before a license can actually be issued to them. So this would be a request contingent on meeting those final requirements, getting the restaurant built, passing their inspections.
Beer and wine, there's this.
Just wine.
Motion by Roscoe,
I have a second, as long as all those votes are checked.
second by Warren. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. This one has always confused me, but I just trust Heidi on this, so the board of review call to order.
So we will just recess the regular board meeting for just a minute, if you don't mind, at 7:11. The Board of Review is required to be called to order within 45 days of the last Monday of April. If the assessment roll is ready, you have to have your first meeting. Our assessment roll is not ready. I have been waiting to hear from the assessor on when it might be ready for us to have that official first meeting. And since we don't have a date for that, we need to call the Board of Review to order and immediately adjourn it so that we can wait for that assessment roll to be completed before we have that mandatory meeting. So what I'm asking you to do at this meeting is to make a motion to call the Board of Review to order, appoint a chairperson so that I have someone that I can use as my point of contact when I do get that information from the assessor, that the assessment roll is ready and we can schedule the Board of Review and then adjourn until a later date. So there's a couple of motions here.
Is this related, Heidi, to the course that
Yes.
Lily and Ally took last week? Okay, perfect, thank you.
And if you're interested in watching the video, I still have it, so.
Perfect, thank you.
So we need to make a motion to call to order. We're already in. it.
We can call the Board of Review to order, and then I will note that Bell, Berto, Shampoo, Roscoe, Werner, and White are all in attendance. But we do need any nominations for who would like to chair the Board of Review?
I think it should be our president.
Want to make that a motion?
I will
please?
make that a motion. Sorry, Heidi.
I second.
Second by Shampoo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Opposed? Okay.
Do you want to appoint a vice chair?
Not
Are you
necessary.
flanking that?
It would only be if there was a conflict of interest during a hearing that you needed to recuse yourself. So,
I nominate Denise for vice chair.
thank you.
So honored.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And
Now
now,
we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
motion by Shampoo, second by White. All those in favor?
Aye.
Lily seconded that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Second by Roscoe. Okay, now that we're back to our board meeting, financial report. Anybody have any questions for Tasha?
Ask them all this afternoon. I'll make a motion that we pay the bills for $767,705.45.
Motion by Berto,
Second that.
second by Shampoo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Oh, is Dan Clancy still with us?
He is.
I didn't- I
Dan?
didn't
Go
hear
ahead.
him.
Yep, I'm here.
So when I was talking to Tasha, about the water, well test, was that on all 3 wells?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Or that was for the PFAS testing, excuse me.
Correct. That was pretty pricey, but I was very pleased. We had non-detectable at all 3 wells, which is great.
Yeah.
Okay. Staff reports.
So, I did not do a written one, I didn't have time, but, just some big things that we had. First of all, thank you to all of you that took the wastewater treatment plant tour today. And for those of you that haven't, if you want to get out there and see it, Dan's always willing to give you a tour, Dan and Megan. And then the other thing was just a grant update. So, the outdoor recreation, planning and transportation committee had talked about, seeing if there was a way to get up a trail up Little Sister Hill. So I had met with, Dan and I had met the first meeting, we actually met with the administrators in Liberty Grove, Ephraim and Fish Creek to see what would be the best route and to see if we could figure out a way to get up Little Sister Hill. And the 4 of us agreed that there was a way and we should try and get a grant to have it engineered. So we did speak with an engineer. We got a rough estimate of what it would cost to engineer that trail to connect Sister Bay ultimately to just north of Egg Harbor. What it would be is connect Sister Bay through Liberty Grove to Ephraim, the sidewalks in Ephraim over to the state park where you can pick up a trail to Fish Creek, cross the highway, and then take a trail along the river and end up just north of Egg Harbor. And so I wrote a grant for that and we received it. So that was $90,000. So can't tell you who it is because we can't do it until they have their own press release, but we're pretty happy about that project. So we can now start engineering that and see what happens with that. Parks Committee, we had talked about expanding the gazebo, putting an addition on there. So I wrote a grant for that and we received $50,000. So we're pretty happy about that one. Again, can't make the announcement though until the funding is there and the state makes the announcement. And then just a small one, Parks Committee had wanted us to apply for a grant to help with purchase a batting cage at the sports complex. The bays were willing to pay whatever the grant didn't cover, so we wrote the grant. It's just a small one. We got $3,000 for it. And then the bays are gonna pay for the rest of it. And then we're gonna pay for the concrete that has to go under it, to get those installed.
Recycle it.
So, and then Dan's, staff report, it's in the packet. He's here to answer questions, but the big things there are, his staff began striping the roads in anticipation of having the no parking signs put up, make sure people know where they can park. And then they started installing the I'll call it the sidewalk, but it's the path at Waterfront Park. So that will help people safely get down onto the beach. He has done, he finished Cherrywood and they're doing really good on Northwoods. They milled and paved Highland, so they've really been going to town on the roads these last 2 months. He's been doing great. There's a lot of information in that packet. Hopefully you've looked at it. Last page of a packet, I think was a really cool project. Last fall, we had a gentleman up on Bluffside tell us, the sewer basically wasn't working, or the storm sewer wasn't working. It was filled in with dirt. It was caved in. There were holes. You drive over my driveway, you'd fall in a hole, which was our storm sewer. So, the utilities committee actually this winter had authorized us to go through and repair that. So that got repaired this spring. You can see Dan dug up the old one. They put in a brand new storm sewer on Bluffside, and then, they're gravelled over it until we can actually do more with the road, but Dan is still on the meeting if there's any other questions about his staff report.
I do have one comment with the project right now on the sidewalk to the beach. It is very hazardous there right now, especially with the being so close to the playground. And there's like wires and it's just open there. And with all the young children running around, it is a big hazard. I was just there and thought myself this afternoon, but is there like, I mean, there's no fencing or anything around there to keep people from going in, like, it's like a ditch almost. It just looks, it's pretty dangerous.
Well, they are repairing some sprinklers right now and those should be buried today or tomorrow. And you can see from my picture, that's about a 4-inch drop is where the sidewalk's gonna go. There's one section a little deeper. We're gonna get that gravelled out and by next week, that'll be a sidewalk. They had some caution tape around it. I think it had gotten ripped down. I can put caution tape up again. That's over probably about 110, 115 feet. I don't really have anything else, but as you can see on the picture, I mean, it's about a 4-inch drop there down to the gravel. I mean, we dug it out. We're going to put concrete flush. I'll make sure those pipes are put. The wires you're seeing are not electrical wires. They're just wires so we can trace the sprinklers. And I think they were repaired this afternoon. I'll go take a look at it. But by Friday, it should look like the picture again. We were just doing some work underground before we put down concrete.
Okay, yeah, I was just concerned for safety purposes, especially with young children running around. All the like pipes and wires exposed.
Sure. I'll put some more sawhorses up alongside the playground side.
When you say sawhorses, you mean those orange and white barricades?
Yes, yes.
If we don't have enough to do it all, I would think it'd be more important to do the side towards the playground.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that side is taped again too.
Dan, you said something that I'd like you to repeat with other board members. You were talking about the striping and the costs on that and some of the challenges.
Yes, I was really pleased. We had purchased last year a striper and Tasha can mention too. I think I spent $200. We purchased some bulk paint and we were able to get thousands of dollars of use out of it. As far as to hire someone like to stripe the sports complex would be thousands of dollars, and we did it for around 200 plus our labor. But I think with us being here, I was really pleased. The guys did a good job. It was quite a savings. I also spent some time and showed the guys how to pour concrete, so we did a few smaller projects ourselves. Again, for the cost of that, a pretty substantial savings for the village.
And those sidewalks is something that you're doing yourself, and that's something that in the past you would have been contracted out.
Yes.
So every project you do, you get a little better, I'm sure.
Yes.
What sidewalk?
For the path.
No,
No, that is contracted out. That is a
Okay,
couple
so just
hundred
the one
feet.
by
We
the
can't
town,
do
the
that.
village hall.
We repaired the one by the village hall, and then we're gonna do another one behind the library.
If it's a small like square or something, it's cost prohibitive to have a contractor come up here to fix a small spot. So Dan has been teaching the guys how to do concrete, so we can do it all in-house on the smaller projects.
Okay,
More questions?
good for staff reports. Okay, on to committee appointments. I don't know, Denise has got something to say.
I thought you were gonna make a presentation.
No, I mean, like, it's in the packet, and so I don't think there's a lot of.
So,
presentation.
well, because there's some questions on here that somebody wrote, and there's blanks. And where no trustee is listed, that there should be one.
Are you operating on the one that came from today, or is this one that's in the packet?
No, I have to hand it out yet. You kind of kept one.
Okay.
So So, do you want to hand those down?
And then we have residents and citizens, but no names in any of those spaces.
So that was what was on there Thursday, and I think that,
Yeah, so, what you see in black is, the appointments that are in black were the trustee appointments that we did. To recommend to the board. And then, we have to have citizen appointments too, so, I had Heidi call everyone to see if they would be interested in being reappointed. So I'm just gonna go through the committee appointments, some issues that we have with them. And we'll take them step by step. York County Coastal Byways, the recommendation was Patrice Shampoo. DCEDC, we're waiting to hear from them whether or not they'll need an appointment from us. It's up to their board whether they have an appointment from our village. York County Tourism Zone Commission. Currently, or this past year, we only had 2 members, but because of the revenue that we hit, we now have 3. So he is recommending Louise Houghton, Lily, and myself. Emergency management, this is one, first thing is, do we want to put a expiration on these appointments? When these appointments were made, there was no expiration set on them. Denise said usually they're for 1 year, so I think, you know, I don't know if we go back and say it's 1 year from when they were appointed or just 1 year from now, saying they'd expire in 5/20/24. My recommendation is to just make them say they expire in 5/20/24. It's easier. And then we also need to have a trustee appointed to that committee. So I will pause there until we discuss that one.
okay, does anybody? Other than Denise and I who would like to be on emergency management?
I can do it.
Okay. All right,
Do we want these 2 terms to expire on 5/24?
Yes.
yes,
All right, so keep moving down then. Finance Committee, we have Nate Bell, Denise Berto, and Don Cox. Then there's the Fire Board. There's a couple things with the Fire Board, so the Fire Board was created by an ordinance that we had with Liberty Grove, if I remember it right, Heidi. And then it said that we are supposed to set the expiration of the appointments. So we're gonna do 2 appointments. They have to be trustees and we have to say what the expiration is. That ordinance also says that the trustees do not get compensated for that committee. Our bylaws say they do, but an ordinance trumps a resolution. So we would need to, when we get to it, we'll need to amend the bylaws to say that those appointments do not get compensated.
Comment. When
Don't
Nate
want-
and I discussed committee appointments, I told him that I was not interested in being on Fire Board. And that I wanted to stay, and I had the conversation with him this morning that I wanted to stay on personnel, but I will make that pitch at that point in time. I have been on Fire Board, was on there for many years in the past. Our chief runs an extremely good committee. And I think my expertise could be used elsewhere. And Nate said that he would, you know, he disagrees with me.
well, so actually, there was 2 parts of that conversation, because we talked about that, but then you said, hold on, that's what, we shouldn't put 2 trustees that don't have experience on Fire Board. So that's what I was referring, I wasn't just ignoring what you had to say, Denise, I was going back to that portion, but yes, I mean, you are quite valuable, but I get what you're saying, like that is not a, it's an important committee.
It is.
But because
it's a
Chris
very
runs it so well, there's not a tremendous. I don't know how to say that properly, stress on it.
Right.
So I guess who else would like to be on Fire Board? We need one other
How
trustee.
often does that meet? And how often does emergency management meet?
Emergency management is intermittent, isn't it? I mean, we were due a meeting.
We had a meeting and then, well, we had set it up before COVID. And because the emergency, manager down at the county was a little busy with that, we didn't meet for over 3 years. And so then we picked up a meeting a couple of months ago.
We recreated the committee in January.
Right. Had that meeting, they will always be zoomed because of him being in Sturgeon Bay and whatever, so it doesn't have to be in person, so wherever you are, you can show up. And we haven't been able to reschedule yet, probably because we didn't know who was going to be on the committee, and we would work towards that.
I think Dan prefers a late afternoon meeting. Like, it has been around 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
So it could be monthly. It could, depending upon how much work may or may not have to be done after a particular meeting. It could be extended out 6 weeks or a couple of months as we work on different verbiage and different things that we need to research.
It would seem to me that it's going to meet successively for a couple of months and then likely not meet that much after we get the issues worked out. So I don't think, I wouldn't imagine it's gonna be a 12-month for.
Right, and it's not necessarily a forever committee. We are setting up what we want to implement in Sister Bay. And so once we have done that, it kind of will go away, and then maybe it's just maybe the plan that we come up with is reviewed by the board on an annual basis or something like that. And if we see something or something has come up, we'll call a meeting. But I would say it probably after less than 12 meetings, certainly not even a year's worth of that it'll be done and over.
I agree.
So I can probably do fire board. I'll do this.
So Allison is taking Denise's place on there, and then Lily's still on there. Okay, and then what expiration date do you want?
Maybe 2024. I want to keep everything consistent on there because that was a real challenge this year.
Yeah.
And did you say you're amending for compensation or amending to make it no compensation?
No compensation.
We're amending the bylaws to match the ordinance.
Okay,
That
so
it's not going to be compensated?
right?
No, we need
ordinance-
to rewrite the ordinance. Board members need to be compensated for that meeting.
Well, then we have to go back to the town. We both have to agree to a new ordinance.
But the town is not involved anymore.
For fire board?
A fire board. Oh. Sorry. I was thinking of that other
If
thing.
you think it's, I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, Denise, and I think that for the moment, we amend the bylaws, and then if we want to amend the ordinance, let's amend the ordinance. And then we can change the bylaws again, because the bylaws are, we can do that pretty quickly. I understand your point that, you know, trustees have got a tremendous amount of demands on their time.
And the compensation isn't worth anything near the time,
It's,
but let's work towards that in the very near future then.
okay, so we amend the bylaws.
And you can
now.
talk to Janet and it will be a lovely conversation.
Certainly.
Okay, so we'll keep going then. So, ad hoc green tier, the 3 people that are on there right now, Mary Smythe, Kalanchis, Lisa O'Hearn. When Heidi talked, they said they would like to be reappointed. And then the chair of that would become Sarah White. Historical Society, the recommendation was Patricia Cole. Library Commission, trustee would be Sarah White. Heidi called Marge and she does want to be reappointed, Marge Gretzmacher as resident. We would still need to come up with another resident appointment.
And so when we put an ad in the paper for some of the other openings, we'll include that in there.
Yes.
Okay.
Marina Committee, the chair would be Don Cox, Allison Warner would be the trustee. We need another trustee. And then the resident would be Pat Duffy and the citizen would be Vilius. So with this one, this is one where we amended it this past year to add in another trustee. So there should be 3 trustees on it.
Who would like to be on Marina?
I could be on Marina.
Hey, Marina Fest, this one ends in January. So, we need a trustee to serve as the chair. And then we need a trustee for the Marina Committee. Then we have, 2 citizen members and then 3 nonprofit representatives. So we have John Blossom as a citizen, Sue Lundquist as a citizen, Mike Scoville, Chuck Hilma, and Chris Hecht are all representing nonprofit organizations. And all of those people have agreed to be reappointed.
Well, obviously Don made a mistake by not being here tonight, so I think we appoint him as chair of Marina Fest.
Or do we want to make him can he be the chair and be from the Marina Committee?
No, because your bylaws say that's 2 trustees.
So then that means Allison or Patrice. Allison already picked up 2.
Yeah, it would have to be Allison or Patrice.
So
Patrice, can
Patrice,
do
do you
that
think
next
you can
year.
do that till the end of the year?
Sure.
There shouldn't be that many meetings.
We have maybe 2.
Okay.
You don't have to do anything.
And he doesn't.
Just be there.
Outdoor rec and transportation. So this one, I know that, well, the sheet that Nate gave me said that it would be Nate Bell, Sarah White, and Lily. But really, we only need 2 trustees, one of which has to be from Parks.
When did we change that? Because that initially was me, Chad, and Mary Lyons.
Chad was on Parks.
And then you need a resident and 2 citizens. And for this one, this group shouldn't have to meet too much longer. They expire, this committee expires once the outdoor recreation plan has been adopted. And we can't present that until some of the things that are going on are completed. And then we can complete the plan, bring it to the committee, they approve it, make a recommendation to Parks, board adopts it, and then you're done.
While you're mulling that over, I'm sorry, Julie, did you have 2 trustees for the Marina Fest Committee?
I did, Marina Fest is Don Cox and Patrice.
So for outdoor rec, you just need 2, and one of those people have to also be on Parks.
That's correct.
So Lily stays and then Nate, your choice.
So then we'll figure out the.
Public line.
So what we'll do is we'll advertise for the residents and the citizens, and then if they don't get appointed, what we have done, I think in the past is we could appoint you, Sarah, as a resident or citizen.
Perfect.
If they
Okay,
don't get people.
that sounds great.
Parks, Property and Streets, it is 3 trustees. The recommendation is Denise Berger will be the chair, Allison Warner, Lily, and then there's 2 residents. Now we have 2 residents right now, Jerry Aarons and Mickey Mustardi. Both of their terms expired in April because they were completing other terms. We have had another person express interest in this committee. So Nate's thought was that we advertise it for those 2 positions, but Nate, do you want to maybe explain your thoughts on that?
So until today, I didn't realize that Jerry Aarons also was not. I thought he had another year to go.
Full term.
But at this point, we advertise it, we get the cast the widest net we can, and then we make a choice after that.
So what this means is for that committee, we can't have any absences until we get those appointments.
And you have a really anxious group who wants to present at Parks on June 5th, so you must have a meeting. The 4th graders from Gibraltar School are.
Oh,
So please have a meeting on June 5th for them.
well, do the residents want to be in those roles?
They do want to be reappointed, but there's some other people that also want to be appointed, so I want to make sure that I'm not.
I see, okay, thank you.
There's another, yeah.
June 5th. Yeah, attendance. That will be a Zoom meeting so that the kids can zoom in from school. Or, I mean, I guess I should.
A hybrid?
A hybrid meeting, yeah.
Yeah, because we have to finish addressing broadband, so Lily, I know you were at the broadband, no, you weren't at the broadband presentation.
No.
I don't think any trustee showed up at the broadband presentation other than the committee.
Right.
Well, there'll be a lot to learn there, but we'll get through that. Personnel committee, the recommendation was Don Cox, Nate Bell, and Sarah White.
And I would like to stay on personnel. And my rationale is that, Don has been on personnel for 1 year. Nate and Sarah, would be new. And I think that's a pretty important committee for historical knowledge of things that have gone on at least, for a while. And so that was my pitch, that I go back onto personnel and off of fire. And if Nate deems it appropriate, which I think it should be, that as village president, he should stay on personnel. I'm asking you if you would be okay with that, Sarah.
This is one I'm actually really interested in. In my career, this is what I do really well. I've had teams of 8, 40, and 1,500 people. And I put development plans together. I am really comfortable in this space. So as I was looking at where I can contribute, some of my other committees I'm excited about, like library committee, I care a lot about, but I know that that is a once a month committee. So personnel felt like, or finance were the two that I was most excited to be able to contribute my skills. So impressive. So that was my pitch to Nate.
I guess my thought was that you've been through the personnel committee, you've been around personnel committee for quite some time, but we have 2 professionals there that I would like to see what they can accomplish. And I understand that there's some value in having historical knowledge of it, but I think that we can overcome that. And there's still that review that, we had talked about, but it's still like that every part of.
Okay. Right, plan commission. These have to be staggered terms. This one's dictated by statute. So we've got Denise Berto expiring in 24, Nate Bell in 25, Patrice Shampoo in 25. Those 3 currently, or I should say, were on plan commission. Marge Grutzmacher is a citizen member who wants to be reappointed. She'd be 26. Dave Schmitz is still on until 26, and Ron Keene is on until 24. So what you're doing there is you're reappointing Marge and Dave. Ron is still there. And then you need to advertise for another resident.
And we also have more than one person that's interested in that position. So we want to cast, let us know.
SBAA, the change there was, it did say a trustee and myself. I found it to be difficult because I have to enforce their contract, so I prefer not to be on that committee. And I know Nate, when we talked, Nate said, yeah, he was just gonna go with a trustee. So we'll have to amend the bylaws on that. You'll see in the packet. So that recommendation was Don Cox. TIF Joint Review Board. This is an interesting one. I know Nate had that, Denise and Allison would be interested, or he'd like to have you on there, but with the TIF Joint Review Board, we don't have any say on that. So it's the board itself who has the say on it. So right now, Rob Zoschke is on that board, and he stays on that board until he resigns from that board. So. Utilities would be Berto, Werner, and Orozco. Did you say that right, Lily? And that one will be meeting with pretty soon. We've got a big issue on that one that we'll be meeting on. And then Village Hall Planning Task Force. The names that were submitted was Don Cox and Patrice Shampoo. However, problem is one of them must be on Parks. So either Don or Patrice would have to be on Parks to make that happen. And then we would be the other people, the citizens you see, they were already appointed with an expiration date of 12/20/24.
So my solution on the village hall would be to remove that requirement for team to be on parks. I think that's a standalone entity, because I'd like to see Patrice stay on there, and I'm happy with the current parks makeup, so that would be my proposed resolution to that.
So when we're going over the bylaws later on, we can just add that to the changes and approve it.
Zoning Board of Appeals, again, this one's dictated by statutes. It has to have so many members, certain makeup, staggered terms. You're looking to Tom Sadler, Patricia Wisner and Deb Duran are on to 24. Liz Hecht is the one that was expiring. She has agreed to be reappointed and her term would be 5/25. You need to find a resident. You have an alternate on there and you need to find another alternate.
Let's put that on the end.
So we'll run an ad for our library commission, a resident and 2 citizens for the outdoor rec and transportation, 2 residents for parks, a resident for plan commission, a resident for zoning appeals, and an alternate for zoning appeals.
Motion on that to approve those agreements.
So these would be, the motion would be contingent on the bylaws being approved.
We have a motion contingent on the bylaws being approved.
So moved.
By White,
Second.
second by Hempel. All those in favor?
Aye.
The bylaws.
So when you're looking at the bylaws, the changes you see in there are, getting rid of the administrative committee. The administrative committee is myself and the chair. And the way it has worked is the chair and the administrator sit down and they look at, oh, we should change this in the bylaws and that in the bylaws. It's kind of silly for it to be a committee, because then you should be posting it, it should be open to the public. And really, it's just, sit down and chat, let's hammer out the bylaws type thing. I know that's what I did with Rob, with Nate, he just kind of left it up to me, so or taking some of his feedback on some of them and incorporating that in there, so it's really not a committee, so it's kind of silly to have it be a committee. So that would be removed. York County Coastal Byway Commission, it had me as, on there, and there's no need to do it really, so we took that off of there. Land Acquisition Oversight Committee, that is done, that ended on January 19th, 2023. SBAA is removing the administrator.
Is that necessary?
Well, there's 2 things with it. One is, like I said, you need to remove me from there.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of all the collaboration that happens.
I mean, it doesn't mean that we're not working with SBA, it just means it really isn't.
So we're looking to Don and whoever the other,
Just done.
just Don. Okay,
And then tourism zone, we're changing it from 2 members to 3 members.
And who they are. I think right now it said village president, village administrator, and it's.
Yep, you're
3
right,
members.
Pete. Cleaning that up, yep. So, and you'll see so those are reflected in the committee bylaws as well. And then we would add information about the fire board, saying that, there's no compensation and that it's a 1-year term. And then we would add to the emergency management section that it's a 1-year term.
And then also taking the parks requirement off of. Village Hall.
Yes.
And you're looking for a motion on those amended bylaws?
Yes, on both the committee and the board bylaws.
I move to accept the committee and the board bylaws
As amended,
as amended.
motion by Warner,
Second.
second by Roscoe, all those in favor?
Aye.
And we'll go down to committee reports. There wasn't many, we didn't have a lot of committees, meetings. But Denise, I did not took it off this page, but it's there. I knew you'd want it. And I need it too. So we had, I'll just go over what did meet, if that's okay. So we had coastal byways. And who was the rep from?
I attended that. The main topic was the coloring book that continues to be developed. Everything else is in the minutes.
Ad hoc green tier.
So I was at ad hoc green tier, I can get that, and we didn't have a trustee there this month. They're doing a lot. They were talking about recommending charging stations. They're talking about composting. Doing a Facebook page, doing a web page off the village website if they can, which they know we'd have to get a new website or wait until we have something going on with that. They were very interested in the wellhead protection ordinance, and what they can do to help protect water quality.
We do have that, a wellhead protection zone.
Yep, so they want more information on that.
Oh, just
to see what's going
information,
on.
okay.
Yeah. So it's a very thorough group. It's an exciting group. They actually did a lot of talking, got a lot done this month, so. All in the minutes.
Historical Society. You have minutes in there, was anybody, who was that?
That was Scott's.
Okay.
So,
Well, the minutes are in there. Library Commission,
I love this meeting. Julie Kingsbury is our new chairperson, so Martha's term wrapped up. So Julie was appointed, and the roof is making progress, so that is expected to be done in the next couple of months. So a lot of progress being made there, and there's additional information in the packet.
Parks, Properties and Streets. There's minutes in there, and,
I think a big thing was the broadband.
Denise, you want to have anything to add on that?
For the Parks meeting, no, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
SBAA. That's in there. And then Village Hall Planning Task Force, that's done.
I have a lot of questions.
Do what we can to, I mean, Julie, you were there?
That was.
Well, we may or may not be able to answer them, but let's try.
Okay, not necessarily questions, comments.
Okay.
I am a little concerned about the committee. And the board authorized the committee, gave them a time frame that they needed to come back with a recommendation for what it's going to be used for, architectural renderings or something, or site plan or something. What will it cost? What are all the things that we need to fix to make it functional for whatever that vision and goal that that committee has for it? So in reading this, and I understand it was important to get rid of the asbestos on the piping and then replace the piping, but to the tune of a little over $10,000. But now Julie is tasked with putting out an RFP for ramping and how to make the bathrooms, accessible. So my concern is I think we're in the weeds. I mean, the clock is ticking. This was a broad, big picture that we asked them to do. And I'm a little bit concerned that if they have spent $10,000, you know, on the asbestos removal, which is important. And then if they start doing something with the bathrooms and a ramp, that money is piecemealed going to whittle away where in my opinion, I think they should be looking at the bigger picture, talking to an architect.
short-term rental ordinance.
What their vision is, their goal is. I know that they put out a survey. I didn't think it was a very good survey. I'm sorry to say. I don't think it gave enough options, places for comments. If you're looking for what people in our community want to see. So that's my take.
I guess what I hear you saying is that if we're doing this piece by piece, we're not having this grand vision, we're slowly replacing something.
That we don't know, you know, is it gonna be money well spent in the end?
Or are we gonna end up redoing it anyway so that we just spent money on that? I think that'd be let me have I'll have a conversation with Don when he gets back.
Okay.
And we'll see what we can do, and then we'll have a better answer
Okay.
for June or before then.
I just don't want to see time wasted, and them not achieving the goal. I guess.
Denise, what was the date we wanted a proposal back?
I thought it was 2 years, right?
November of 24, I think it is.
Where we want the grand division?
Well, when they're supposed to come and present all of their
Oh.
research and
Oh.
what, you know, if there's a site plan.
2 years?
I think
Oh,
2
wow,
years.
okay.
Yeah.
December of 24.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, it's May. We're 6-7 months in.
Gotcha. Okay.
I want it to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I can just make a comment about these, for the new members. If you're on a committee that, there's no staff person on, make sure you relay back to staff kind of the big things. For example, sometimes a committee will say, oh, we're gonna do this, and the village is expected to pay maybe $50,000-$70,000, and that may never get relayed back to us to put into a budget. So just make sure if it's something that's gonna affect the budget or something we should know about, you let us know to make sure we do get it in the budget. Because there have been times where all at once we're given a bill or something comes up and we're like, wait, we didn't plan on that. And then you're juggling and maybe canceling something else to just meet the needs of it.
Because staff does not necessarily read all the minutes of the committees.
No, we don't read them, and we're not at all of the meetings either.
Right. So that would be the purpose behind it.
Okay. Matters to be placed on future agenda or referred to committee. Yeah. A motion to approve the committee reports.
Second.
Motion by Shampo, second by Rhoda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Matters to be placed on a future agenda or referred to committee. I had a conversation with Chris Eckles for Denise Parks about the crosswalk signs, the ones that go in the middle of the road. And what I proposed to him, I asked him, I said, I understand, I was looking at a fire truck going around the corner of 42 and Mill, and you see it, it goes right over the center line, that's not gonna work there. However, I do think those signs are very effective in slowing people down, making them think, making them pay attention. What I had asked, I said, well, would it have the same impact on the fire trucks and the emergency vehicles if they were by Busby's on the corner of Maple and then also at Scandia in Covington? And he said, no, because there's enough room around there. So I wonder if you, like, talk about that parks,
Put it on the agenda.
What am I talking about? Crosswalk or
the signage, like the,
just sign it?
the ones that go in the middle of the road.
Pedestrian crossing,
Oh,
state
the ones
law.
that say on the median or the.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just two and not to be more than two, because that was the other thing, is like, well, that's fine, those two, but let's not keep putting them in between. I said that, no, really, it's on either end of town when people are coming in and out.
Perfect. And
That's-
then we will bring back Gibraltar and the law enforcement.
And schedule Julie go first.
Julie, and also I want to schedule Michelle with BCBC. She had asked last month to, at some point, and I said that May wasn't gonna be a good time, so I don't know if we want to.
Okay, do you want me to reach out to her?
Sure.
Yeah.
You,
Michelle,
CDC,
got her last name.
that Michelle Lori from Dorfman Economic Development Corporation.
Last month, I think we had a library, like the agreement that we were gonna do with the county, did we? And we were gonna just do a 1 year, right? I think Denise, that was your recommendation. To do it through the end of the year.
Through the end of the year, and then he reached out to me and I said, I haven't had time to get back to it.
Okay.
We do have time, and I gave him some questions in the median, in the meantime, but it's on the, we'll bring it back when you have the information, Sarah.
Okay,
But that's a good point, because it's.
don't want to get lost in the
yeah, I just
shuffle.
know that,
Yeah, and it just takes a while.
okay, fair. And then the signage issue that came up with the library, do we talk about that later? Is that appropriate to talk about here?
Is that the open sign?
Yeah,
Oh, that was approved.
it was approved.
How could it be approved? I did not sign off on it.
The open sign?
Yes, the LED open sign, that's illegal.
The internally illuminated open sign.
Well, then we need to talk about that.
Yeah,
Because
because
we had
Ron
a sign
Kane
on the
called
plan
me
commission.
and came in person. And in the beginning, I just thought it was a little wooden placard that they would put up open. And as we've got further into the discussion, it's like, no, this is a $2,000 LED sign. And I said, no, I cannot sign off of that. And I went back and I looked at the zoning code. And it says that you can have those that cannot flash, but you can have them in the window. You cannot have them by the road. You cannot have them attached to any other sign.
We'll have to talk about that, because it was on, if I remember right, it was on the application that went to the plan commission. So we'll talk about it later. 'Cause I need the file, I need to look at the file.
Okay. Sorry, Sarah.
No, that's why I would say, I don't know if I'm bringing this up here, but, yeah, I think my only comment, and I think obviously sort through all of those approvals. If there is concern, one comment is the library to me is different than a business because it's a service to the community.
There's a law, Reed versus Gilbert. and we
Okay.
cannot treat you any differently.
We can't treat ourselves any different. That's
Right.
really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I trust you guys and plan commission to sort through all that. I just.
Yeah, because originally, I think it was a year ago or so that Marge Grutzmacher talked to me about it. We figured out the size that would be appropriate, and it was going to be in the window. And now it's a totally different sign at the road.
Well, yeah, and I think like at the end of the day, what the issue is, and maybe there's a creative way to solve this, is given where the library is. The library wants to make sure people know when it's open and when it's closed, because the hours are not consistent because of staffing.
And we need to work on that.
Totally, right? So there's
Yes.
right? So it all comes down to how do we make this? How do we make it so people know when the library is open? I mean, that's really what they're trying to solve for.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, then I'll make a motion, we convene into executive session. Is that a roll call for a second?
Bill,
Yes?
Berto,
Yes.
Shampoo,
Yes.
Roscoe, yeah, Warner, yes, and White.
Yes.
So are we leaving or
I think
Are
we
they
should-
leaving?
We should probably, if the room's open, we should probably.
or do we,
since we're-
do we have anybody zooming in that is gonna be in on this conversation?
No. I'll make a motion, we come out of executive session. By Bell, second by Roseville, all those.
White. And Warner, here, Roscoe, here, Shampoo, here, Berto,
Yes.
and Bill.
Yes.
Yeah. Confused because I did it reverse.
I did, I got confused.
Okay. Now out of order to 8A, preliminary review of the short-term residential dwelling ordinance. Really?
Okay. So the short-term dwelling ordinance, there's been a lot of discussion about this, for a couple months. You know, it's been discussed here and there, pretty much, pretty heavily at planning commission, the need that if you change one ordinance, you need to change both ordinances.
Hold on, so this is chapter 18,
This is chapter 18.
so, and the plan commission is dealing with chapter 66. Could you
66.
help us understand that?
So chapter 18, the one in front of you, is not a land use ordinance. It's a licensing ordinance, which is approved by the board. So this is about what it takes to, how you apply for a license, what you have to supply for that license, what we review, what happens if there's a violation, things of that nature. Chapter 66 goes to planning commission, and that's a land use ordinance. So that's not issuing you a license for it. It's just saying, as far as land use, what is considered, and that we're having a public hearing, not you, but the planning commission is having a public hearing on May 23rd. And it'll come to the board if a recommendation comes forward from them to move it forward. So planning commission can look at land use, you're looking at license. It gets really confusing because the two do cross, some things cross. For example, if you have a definition of a short-term rental, you want it to be consistent in both codes. So there's crossover there, and that's why you have to, they kind of have to be moving at the same time. Or they're gonna negate each other, so it's kind of a moving target, we have to just keep moving them along. So, with this one, we had, planning commission had received their public hearing or their comment sessions, they had, last meeting, they had both short-term rental operators in support. Or I'm sorry, how it came to plan commission this year was, in the R2 district, I think is how it started, because in the R2 district, the zoning code says that you can't have short-term rentals, if it's in a condominium, you can't have short-term rentals at all in an R2 district. And then there's other areas of code, zoning code that says if you have a residential condominium, the rentals are limited to 20% of those units in the condominium. And not more than, I can't remember offhand what it is, 30 days out of a year, I think, or something like that. There's another part of the zoning code that says they have to be owner occupied. So there's a lot of inconsistencies in there, and we've never enforced the part that said the owner had to be there at time of rental. But so what you have in your planning code is you have to be owner occupied, we're only limiting, we're not gonna allow more than 20%. We're, I think, like I said, 30-day maximum per year, and we're not going to allow them in R2 at all. That conflicts with the licensing ordinance. And so the thought was try and clean them both up. So the thought was if you limit them in R2, they shouldn't be, you shouldn't limit them in any district. And then if you're you know, they were limited to 30 days. That really wasn't fair. People want to rent them more than 40 days. And then we had people threaten to sue us. You're not following the state code, because the state code says you have to allow them everywhere. So the plan commission started looking at that, and state code says you cannot limit them in certain areas. But you can, as a municipality, the only thing the state would allow you to do is say, limit the time, the 7 days, limit them to 7 days. And then you could limit them to 180 or more days a year. So you have to allow them for 180 days. So when changing the planning code and sending that to public hearing, it meant you also had to change this one to make it consistent. So this one, as you read through it, also addresses a lot of the concerns, complaints, issues that we've had. But it seems very lengthy, because what's happening in this code is you start out by the code saying what you need to submit on an application. And to make it very clear, it then goes on to say how that is reviewed in order to get a license, and then how that has to, how the operator has to function for those rules. So basically, what you're seeing in one section is kind of repeated throughout the whole document, so it is pretty long. It does get pretty long. It is a combination of a lot of research. We had, you know, we consulted legal resources on it, white papers on it, national publications on it, other communities' ordinances on it, that specialize in how to find common ground. Because what we are seeing, what the Plan Commission was seeing, was the community seems to be very divided right now. There seems to be, I think when we hit that tipping point, when there was such a high number of short-term rentals in the residential area, which is where we tend to see the concern, that tipped it, and people are really were unhappy with the laws the way they were and what was happening. So this tries to address both sides of the issue, find common ground. You know what? You're right, we'll give on this, but then we're gonna exercise our right that the state gives us. So again, it was trying to find that common ground in between that. I guess that's all I can really say about it. I mean, we can go through it section by section. I think it's probably easier to just say, what are the concerns?
Can
Some of the
Heidi,
stuff-
Heidi take us through the map before we get to that?
Sure.
So I'm sorry you're not gonna be able to see it all that well. I tried to mimic the colors of the zoning districts according to what your zoning map shows. So the white pins, which are primarily in this area, there's about 6 of them here. There's a dozen more down here, 5 here. Those are all the single family residences being used as short-term rentals right now. The yellow here are the R2s that have licenses or have applied for licenses. So the biggest group of them here on Shoreview Road, and then Scotland has 4. The pink pins, there aren't too many of those. That's the B1 General Business District. We have just a couple of short-term rentals in that area. The downtown business transition, which is the B2 district, are the red here. This would be the area across from the beach, down Parkview Drive and on Bluffside and Maple by the administration office. And then the green are the B2, or I'm sorry, B3 downtown business district, short-term rentals. This would be Marina View condominium, or this is Big Space for You condominium next to Skipstone. Then the Sunrise building has, oh, this is the Sunrise building, sorry about that. This is Mill Road Place on Maple, or on Mill Road, right down the road. So in all, there are 107 pins on the board.
And those are current.
Those are current and new
applied for.
applicants who have their application sitting on Julie's desk waiting to be reviewed. So the deadline, I'm sorry,
How many are waiting to be reviewed?
about 80 of them.
Wow.
I'm sorry, the phone rings nonstop. People asking where their license is, and I'm like, don't call and ask, I forgot that it's you.
What was the deadline you said?
I'm sorry, the deadline for submitting your renewal application is this Friday, the 20th, so we still have about, I wanna say 30 applications that haven't come in yet.
The biggest issue with them is the majority are incomplete. So you go by the rules in effect at time of application. So originally not knowing what was gonna happen with this, we're like, you need, you know, get your application in because we're afraid these rules are gonna change and then, you know, if they change, they at least have a year to adjust to that change and plan for it. So we're trying to get people to get their applications completed and get them taken care of, but, well over 80% are incomplete. We ask for 4 things on that application. You fill out the form, you give us on a renewal form. We ask you to fill out the form and give us 4 things, and maybe 5 of them had everything. You know, so it's, you send in an email, we need this from you, and then why do you need this? Is this what you need? No, this is what I need, and it's very time consuming, and that's why this redraft is very explicit. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, give me this. Now, this is why I'm gonna use it. This is how it's used, and then this is what's gonna go in your rules, and then these are what you're gonna agree to, making it kind of foolproof. So people get it right, so they don't waste time, because it's wasting time for them and it's wasting time.
What are the items that they're not getting incomplete or accurately?
The biggest thing I think people struggle with is their DAT cap inspection. They don't know what that is. A lot of people, they're like, what is that? And it's like, well, that's, I know. The DAT cap inspection is the inspection that you have when you first apply for your license, and then you're supposed to have the property inspected then DAT cap is supposed to inspect it every 3 years after that. DAT cap is behind. Some haven't been inspected since 2016. Some they'll do video inspections or rely on people to, you know, give them reports. But I think people forget that 3 years ago, you got a piece of paper that said inspection report. You know, I guess we made the assumption that somebody operating in a short-term rental would keep their paperwork in a folder. But I don't think it always works that way. You have some people that are, I think, are very organized, and some that aren't. Like, or maybe the wife handled it and the husband did. I don't know. I don't know what the issue is. It doesn't seem that hard. The other part that a lot of people struggled with was their agent agreement, because in the old code, the requirement to have that agent agreement was kind of further down in the code. So a lot of people miss it. I think all but 5 missed it the first year. So now that we're trying to get that the second year, they're like, well, I didn't have to have this last year. And we're like, well, you did, but it was missed. So can you get it to us now? You know, trying to make it right, trying to help them get that file up to code. It's a struggle. It's a very time consuming thing. And, you know, I've had conversations with the tourism, Door County Tourism Zone about them enforcing this once we get it cleaned up. Once we know, yes, these properties need code, then can they maybe track them or something? Because other communities are looking at that, having that discussion as well. And they said they'll give us some bids on what it is, you know, but we're just not there yet, because, you know, one of the big things we have with these properties too is you have to show where parking, we have a code that says you can't park on the grass. And we tell people they have to send in a map that shows where their parking is, and they'll show us like 20 stalls or whatever. And that's an exaggeration, but it'll say like 10 stalls, and I'll go out there and the driveway is maybe 9 feet wide, 75 feet long. Where are you putting these cars? You know, so what started as Heidi processing applications, license applications, has turned into, no, you really need to go out and look at every one of them, because you can't trust the parking plans on many of them. So at this point, I'm issuing them without the inspections, and then people are gonna be mad and say, well, you didn't tell me this last year. Well, that's because I was trying to get you a license real quick. But yeah, it needs to be cleaned up. It needs to be foolproof, and that's what this ordinance is trying to do, as well as allow the village to do the one thing that the state allows them to do, and that is the 7 days and the 180. You've heard a lot of, read a lot of complaints about. I think all our letters were from the short-term rental operators. I don't think we received, I don't think this meeting received any from the landowners. But that's, I mean, again, I think it's easy if I just answer questions.
I think, I'd like to add something that you said. The reason that the legislature put in the 7 days and the 180 days, because first of all, it's horrible law. It's just wide open. There are huge gaps, too many spaces for interpretation. That's why there are lawsuits all the time trying to figure out what they really meant. They haven't gone back and tried to figure it out themselves to give communities help. But the reason they did the 7 days and 180 is because they felt that anything beyond that was a business operating in a residential district. If you could do it 365 days a year, you're operating a business. We don't allow hotels, motels, inns in residential districts. So they gave us that one piece that we could legislate.
I guess I have a lot to say about this whole ordinance, and I wrote something up if I can read it. So I understand we don't want businesses necessarily in the neighborhoods, but we do, I mean, it is law that people are allowed to rent out their homes, and I saw what everybody's saying about the 7 day 180 being an issue. So I had several issues with the proposed ordinance. To me, it seems too restrictive and too onerous on the STR owners. And to me, I think a simple code would make people be able to actually complete their applications versus everything that's written in this code. I don't know where people are going to come up with all these papers, insurance, and I don't know, everything that was in there. So although I understand that there have been some problem with STRs, I think we should treat the average STR owner as a member of our community and assume that they want to invest in our village and protect our resources. Most of these STR owners either live in Door County, want to live in Door County in the future, or want to spend a significant amount of time in Citrus Bay. And I know many Door County residents who own STRs, and they are all just trying to find another way to make ends meet. And through having a son at Gibraltar, I've also met families new to the area who happen to own STRs, in addition to working remote jobs or other jobs. And they've made very positive impacts on the communities in various ways. And I'm happy to have these new young families in our community. A few years ago, my neighbor's property sold and became an STR, and we have occasional get-togethers with the new owner's family when they're in town. But otherwise, the home is occupied by tourists, and we have never had one complaint about any of them. And now the house kitty corner to ours has also become an STR, and again, I don't notice it. I understand that we have an affordable housing issue, but I do not believe that STRs are to blame. There is a nationwide housing shortage. This is not just a Door County or Citrus Bay issue, and I believe this is more due to years of low interest rates. It's not an STR problem. Even though the ability to turn a home into an STR may have slightly driven up prices, these homes are not necessarily suitable for workforce or affordable housing in the first place. And if they hadn't become an STR, many would have become a vacation home that sat empty much of the year. I believe homes that became STRs in Citrus Bay sold for less than 1% more over asking price than homes that did not become STRs. So therefore, on average, all homes were selling for over asking price in the past year, but the STRs sold for a fraction of a percentage more. And as stated in many of the emails that we received, STR owners are investing much of the income they generate back into the property, landscaping, tree removal, and making the homes much more sound. Several of these homes also sat vacant before being purchased by the current STR owner and were in need of a lot of love. And we received many emails in the past few days from STR owners, residents, and vacationers, and 100% of them were in opposition to the proposed ordinance. The biggest issue seems to be the 7 day minimum and the 180-day maximum rental periods. And we want families to visit our community, and many of these families cannot take off 7 days at a time, nor do they have the funds to take a week-long vacation. Hotels and motels are also not a great fit for a family, especially extended families and families with multiple children. Trying to squeeze a family into one hotel room is extremely uncomfortable. And STRs are the perfect answer where people can have outdoor space, room to cook, and separate areas for differing bedtimes. So capping the rental period at 180 days also does not make sense to me. Destination Door County is trying to push the shoulder season, yet we are saying vacationers are not welcome in Sister Bay neighborhoods during the off-season. This is the time when we need an influx of tourist dollars the most. We want the grocery store, hardware store, coffee shops, and restaurants to stay open, and they can only do this if they have people coming in. I think the market will regulate itself in the winter, and the village does not have to try to regulate this. I've never heard anyone complain of too many tourists in the middle of February. So I have many specific issues throughout the rest of the proposal that I could go through now, but I think we need a task force of interested parties to work through this ordinance before anything passes. And I think we should look to the ordinances of Ephraim and Bailey's Harbor for guidance. These are clear and concise and easy for applicants to follow. And I just want to make sure nothing conflicts with Wisconsin statute in our ordinance.
So just a couple of things on that. First of all, the asking price thing is incorrect. The planning commission actually looked at a log on what homes sold for the asking price and everything. So I think at some point it was like one of them was like 30-some% higher. I mean, it's rarely is it within 1%. So the planning commission studied a lot of that data. So for those of you who want us to look at Bailey's Harbor, I just want to point out a few things for you. And before I do that, real quick, the 7-day thing, it says there has to be a period there. So the operator, the person doesn't have to stay there the 7 days. The operator is only offering it for a period of 7 days. So
okay, I think some people had that confused.
yes, I
more
think so too,
restrictive
because
then.
we've heard that as well. But that's not what the code says.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Sure, the
The
way the
7
code's
days.
written. It says.
You can only rent it once in a 7-day period. You can't rent again.
So they
within
could
the
just
7
stay
days.
for 4
One
days.
time a week.
Yeah, you can say 4
One
days, you can say
rental a
2,
week.
you can say 7, but you're offering it for a 7-day period. All right, so the Bailey's Harbor resident, which I know people have said we should do, so just so people understand that this is operating your primary residence. Primary residence is defined as an individual's true fixed and permanent home for at least 183 days in a calendar year, and to which whenever absent from that individual intends to return. So that 183, I think you can see where that's coming from. So Bailey's Harbor is doing the same thing, but they're saying it can't be your second home that you bought. It's got to be your primary home, and then you can rent it out. So it's actually more restrictive than Sister Bay. It also talks about this residential dwelling is to include rentals of less than 7 consecutive days. If it's less than 7 consecutive days, the owner must be there. Owner occupied. All short-term rental licenses of record and in good standing prior to July 15th, 23, they'll grandfather. And then they have different mileage things. They say if the owner doesn't reside within 75 miles, then they have to have an agent within 25. Ours, you'll notice we reduced to try and give our local people jobs, because a lot of people are getting their agents from Sturgeon Bay, and we're like, there's people here, why not support the people that live here in Sister Bay? So that was reduced in this current one, but this one actually has different numbers than we have. They have the number of occupants in a dwelling unit shall not exceed the limit set forth in Wisconsin Administrative Code, which is something we should probably look at doing. Because we're seeing homes that are advertising 20 people. Well, that's a violation of state code. Because you have to have so many cubic feet per person for ventilation. They're mandating it, saying you have to do it. I'll be honest with you, I think it's something that we probably should do. So I think that part is good, but so people, when they say look at Bailey's Harbor, they have to really read the Bailey's Harbor ordinance. It's more restrictive than Sister Bay.
Okay, I skimmed that one today. I like Ephraim's ordinance. I'll change my comment.
There's one big difference, and I know that there's some legal challenges, let's not call them challenges. Nothing that can't be overcome, and that is the grandfathering. And that is vital to me for this, because otherwise we have the people who have purchased SDRs under one set of rules. We're yanking the rug from under them, and we're changing the rules. And it's going to have a dramatic impact on the economy, and not a positive one. So I believe, I understand that there's some challenges getting a grandfathering in here, but it is extremely hard for me to support something that doesn't have some mechanism to grandfather, and I think there's ways that we can do that.
Well, okay, so through the flip flop to chapter 66, for example, I know the Johnsons were talking about something. Chapter 66 never recognized old resorts, okay? The redraft would make a property like the Johnsons a grandfathered property. The part that in the old cottage resorts, I'm thinking of one out on the south side of town. You know, there's no way, we don't have anything in the zoning code to treat properties like that. So the chapter 66 amendments that go to the board next week, put that in there so you can grandfather cottage
Hold on.
resorts.
It goes to the plan commission for a public hearing next.
Yes, yes. But then there's still a question of what I think you here saying is you want to grandfather, so to speak, time limits.
I want what I believe we should do is the existing STR should operate under the existing rules. That we should only apply these regulations to new rules, and I don't know where those regulations end up for 783 days and all that. That's for debate. It's all for debate, of course, but I think that anybody that has an operating STR as of today shouldn't have those rules changed.
Well, so the way the law works is you go by the rules in effect at time of application. And that license is good for, in our case, that license is good for a year. So and everybody that has their license right now, they got a 1-year license, so they're all going by the rules in effect. The applications I'm processing now, if I can get them approved, they'll be operating under the rules that are in effect right now for another year. So they're kind of grandfathered that extra year. Legal advice, and I know myself from my years of experience, you can't grandfather a license. We are seeing some of that here, but they're not grandfathering. I'd like to see if this gets challenged in court if it's legal or not.
I guess what I would
Which
propose.
we could push that on.
Which I would propose that we match Bailey's Harbor's grandfathering clause, so that if it does go to court, we can go to court with Bailey's Harbor, so we can defray some legal expense on that.
So you wanted to say that,
I'm saying at least,
if after July 15th, of 2023, anyone that rents less than 7 days, the owner must be there.
No,
some version of that. Not that exact portion, but the component, the mechanism for grandfathering, that's what I want to mirror.
Can I throw something out there, something to consider?
Okay.
So Act 59, was in 2017. Why not anyone that predated Act 17 doesn't have those time limits on it? Or I'm sorry, 2017 doesn't have those time limits on it. Because they got their permits not from us, they didn't get them from us, but they got them from the tourism zone when the state laws read differently.
You're saying from pre-2017, then, so we
And
have,
that's over half your short-term rentals.
that's better than not having anything at all, but that still only gets me half the way of where I feel we should be. And again, this is just my voice.
Well, is
Other
the
people have
goal,
other opinions.
yeah, is the goal to get them all, everybody that's out there right now licensed, or not to have time limits on everyone that is licensed right now? Is that the goal?
That was
I think
my
that
goal.
impacts the how you get
Well,
there.
let's go on and see.
Sorry, I didn't. Was I doing that?
We, along with probably every other community who has been struggling with this, would not be having these conversations about restricting STRs if they were not infiltrating our neighborhoods. If this was good and a win-win for everybody, we would not need regulation and restrictions. I was, well, we all were here, elected to this position. And I feel that my responsibility is to the constituents who put me here, who are year-round people, who vote here, who live here, who work here. Now, I understand that we need to have some common sense here and that we need to find a happy medium, but our locals aren't happy. And so we are trying to bend over backwards to people who don't live here. Just chew on that. I'd like to make some statements because there were a lot of emails that we all read, and I'm sure we interpreted them very, very differently. So there was a lot of discussion about how if they can't be rented year round, how it was going to impact the local businesses. There are 24 restaurants in Sister Bay, proper and a little bit out. They go from JJ's on the north end of town to Culinaria on the south side of 42, over to Dovetail, the gas station. They have a new one opening. According to the Sister Bay Advancement website, 12 of them close in the winter. There was also discussion about that there would be, where would all these people go if they couldn't rent in the winter? Well, according to the Door County Tourism Zone, November's occupancy, and this is all hotels and STRs, was 29%. December was 18%. January was 19%. February was 24%. So if there's some STRs that choose to not rent in the winter and pick a different 180 days to rent, our brick and mortar hotels can use that business. And isn't that helping our community also? There are also 4 hotels. There is Island View that the Johnsons talked about, their resort that closes in the winter. The Sister Bay Inn out on Highway 57 closes in the winter. Village View closes in the winter. And Roots closes in the winter. So even with those 4 closing, the occupancy rates are still at those extremely low numbers. So if more people are pushed to our hotels who are vested in our community, who when we go to and knock on their door and ask for a donation for something that's going on at Gibraltar or the Lions Club or Sister Bay Advancement that they're members of, they're there with handouts as being part of our community. I haven't talked to a local who is born and raised here that likes what's happening in their neighborhoods. Maybe you have. I have not. Think that's all I wanted to say. Oh, no, one other thing, sorry, my small little notepad. So at 11 o'clock last night, and couldn't stop thinking about this, I went on to VRBO and I typed in Sister Bay's zip code. And I narrowed the map so it would be kind of Sister Bay proper. And I found something really amazing that I had no idea. I had no reason to ever go on their website. I will never stay in a VRBO if I ever leave the county. It's not my thing. I don't believe in them. I'm a hotel girl, I guess. And I don't have a big family where I need extra space. So what I found in here was in their listings that there's, and it's going to be a lot of numbers, There's a home with 6 bedrooms. It's, has 15 beds in it. And it holds 22 people. There's another one that has 6 bedrooms, 15 beds. Well, 14 people. A 2-bedroom home, 7 beds, sleeps 12. 2-bedroom, 7 beds, sleeps 8. 5 bedrooms, 11 beds, sleeps 14. 4 bedrooms, 10 beds, sleeps 14. 10 bedrooms, 12 beds, sleeps 16. 8 bedrooms, 14 beds, sleeps 22. Do those sound like single-family homes? One other thing that was mentioned about in some of the emails was that if we restricted it to 180 days, that the people who are cleaning these places, who I presume, I hope, are making a good wage for not a fun job, and how their hours, their pay would be cut in half. And a quick peruse through the Peninsula Pulse from last Friday, there were, and I did not look diligently, I found that Liberty Lodge, Birchwood Lodge, Ashbrook, Raleigh's Bay Resort, Landmark, The Shallows, Alpine Resort, By the Bay Motel, and Thorpe House, we're all looking for housekeepers. So if that is a possibility, if this is enacted in the way it's presented, I doubt that it will be. I think we'll have a lot of conversation about lots of different parts of this. But there's other places to work.
What about in the winter though? That's summer advertising.
They don't all close.
Obviously, we need to talk a lot about this. But my take on this is, I'm not for new developers coming into Sister Bay and building new short-term rental properties all over Sister Bay. There's one going down one street from me, a neighbor, they're putting in like 5. There's 4 on my little street. We do not know our neighbors anymore. I have nothing against the families that have been here a long time, who've had cottages here a long time. That was part of our culture here in Sister Bay. You had people, they owned cottages on the bay or on the shore in town, and that was their business, and they ran it, and they should not be punished at this late time. But it's the new people, it's the new developers coming in, and they're greedy. And they are gonna, exploit Sister Bay. This is a good way to make some fast money. And they buy up every little house they can, and they turn it into an STR, and all the local young people and young families, they don't have a chance at buying it. It's gone before they even get to the bank. So we have to start thinking about the residents and not forgetting about the people who have been building up Sister Bay all these years as well. So there has to be a balance somewhere. We need to talk about this. I understand the 7 days is asking a lot. It's going to turn off a lot of people, and that's not good either. But we can't keep going the way we have been going. It's ruining the village. It really is.
To follow up on that, at what point is it too many? If we're at 10% right now, or a little bit over that, of our single family homes, our STRs, what's our tipping point? Where do we stop, or don't we? Is it okay if it hits 30, 40, 50% of our homes in our neighborhoods?
I think that's a very valid question. I think you had some very valid points. I don't like the idea of houses being knocked down and turned into new SDRs, but I do like the idea of people fixing up the little places and using them and having them as their summer home that they can share with other guests just to pay for it. So I think there is definitely a balance here, because a lot of people do buy these homes to protect them and to keep them cute. And it is part of the history to rent out little houses, but I do agree, we shouldn't be knocking down little houses and building big houses and sleeping a ton of people in there, in our neighborhood.
Well, and I think that's part of what I'm having a little bit of trouble with is like, what problem are we really trying to solve with this? And I think maybe we're trying to solve many different problems, and because we're doing that, I feel like there's a little bit of alignment across all of us that's needed. If it is about preserving what we all love about Door County, both locals and people like me who moved here because I wanted to raise my kids in this community with my husband. And I think I worry about, I think those are fair questions to be asking, and we should be asking that, and we should come up with what are we okay with? When I reviewed this multiple times, I worry a little bit about, there's more questions. I think we have more information next week when we have a hearing that we need to gather that additional data and information. I think we need to make sure all voices are being heard. I think there's some economic analysis that's still needed. I like some of the numbers, Denise, you're pulling. I think there's more questions I have around some business implications. We run a business, and that's, you know, I'm one perspective, but in talking to some business colleagues around what are the implications to 180-day rentals, like what would that look like? I also think flexibility is really important. I do have a large family, so I am looking for those houses that have, you know, slate 14. And I think that's one of the magical pieces about Door County also is we see a lot of family reunions up here. We see a lot of, this is a, you know, 1 week where people come travel from all over. And I think there's a lot of memories that people have of, and it's part of our duty is to make sure that those still exist. I also wonder if we're encroaching a little bit on what our duty is versus what the duty is of DAPCAP or the state. And so I was struggling a little bit with that, which I would look to Julie to help us navigate with our attorney. But I just, in reading this, I don't have a STR. I use STRs. I love VRBO and Airbnb. But I was having trouble with the amount of requirements in here. I totally appreciate trying to address noise or dogs off leashes or parking or safety, you know, ensuring people are compliant. All of that is really important, but I'm not, like I go back to some of the work that, you know, the office is needing to do. And I can't imagine having to review, you know, 90 or 100 or 120 of these applications every year with the amount of information we're asking for. So there's this part of me that's like, there's a way to find a balance. I don't think we're there yet. I think this is a start. I think we heard a lot of feedback around this with all of the emails that we saw. I think we have a lot more work to do on this. And just additional data and conversation to bring forward. So that's my 2 cents.
I'd like to add to that too. I think one thing we should not forget is that we do live in a tourist destination. I think that we are adding too many or creating too many issues. We're blaming too many issues on short-term rentals. I think we do need to establish what we want to solve. by placing these restrictions on STRs. So that's one thing we have to determine, what issues do we want to solve and then go from there. Just by looking at this, I don't agree with some of these restrictions here. I'm going to agree with Sarah and Allison and Patrice mentioned, you know, coming up with solutions that will create a balance. And then just speaking about our local community, of course, you know, the reason I think we're all here is because we care about our community and we want the best for our community. But our community is not just people complaining about not knowing their neighbors. Our community are also business owners that will be affected by this. So we definitely need to determine or prioritize what issues we do want to solve by placing restrictions on STRs, and we definitely need to look further into this, dig deeper. We need more statistics. Thank you, Denise, for the numbers you offered. That's something I had not looked, or you mentioned, sorry, I had not looked into. Good information to have, but we definitely need to work on this more. I feel like there is a lot of pressure right now on trying to get this ordinance through and approved, whatever it is, but I don't think we're ready for it. Yeah.
Also remember that 55% of our community are senior citizens. They're not all business people.
Yep, I do know that, but a lot of families such as Sarah and myself, and I know a lot of young families that are moving up here as well to try and make a living and raise our families up here. Door County is changing. It's not, yeah, and I understand, I respect every single resident. I respect the senior residents. I moved to Door County 20 years ago with my parents, left for 10 years and moved back 6-7 years ago. And I really do think that we need to adapt to how our community is changing as well. But I do understand that, yeah.
Can we agree upon the most broad basic framework? And this is my idea here. I fundamentally feel, and I get your point, Julie, that you can't, even when we grandfather a use, say we want to go out on a legal limb, and it is a legal limb to go out on, I believe it's worth going out on. We have one set of regulations for everybody that was whatever date we choose is held to, and then we have another tier for new people. And I think to your point, Denise, how many is enough? Well, we could slow the growth, because change is the only constant in this world. All we can do is manage change, and I think that might be a good path towards managing the change, to have two different tiers. And as this discussion happens, I do think that there probably is some additional regulation that needs to go on to the existing rental, but I think that's got to be much different than these new STRs that are going to come up.
I don't think I'm there yet. I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm not prepared to support two different proposals yet. Though I appreciate the grandfathering concept. I think what I would recommend, we don't make any decisions tonight until we've heard our next week. I think it's Tuesday, we have a hearing. Because I'd even like to run projections on some of the questions Denise was asking. What is our tipping point? What does that look like? How far away are we if the growth continues at the rate it's going? How are we going to preserve the magic of Door County and Sister Bay? I mean, I don't, that's maybe one potential solution. I don't know today if I'm ready to say, yes, that's the right solution.
That's fine. I guess the one question I would have for you, Julie, is I perceive that there's a time crunch on this. Is there really a time crunch? I mean, as long as we get this done by the end of the year, it's going to affect in 2024.
Well. It ties in with the zoning where the short-term rental operators have threatened, they're saying that, they're gonna sue us because the zoning code does not allow them to do whatever they want. So I guess you could pass the zoning code, but not this, but then they don't match. They're, they almost go hand in hand. I mean, the other thing is there's a bunch of condominiums that want to rent. They have submitted licenses, and we agreed that as a board, before you guys run the board, that they should be able to rent, but they're in a zone that doesn't allow them to rent, so we can deny all of those people, but I think you're gonna have lawsuits on them. They were banking on the code getting changed to allow them to operate. Because remember, we had that hearing in April and then we had the hearing in April and then we canceled it, so they'd go to this one.
Can we just change that one little portion saying R2 can rent?
It's more than just R2 though. So I mean,
Could we say all districts are able to rent? We can always change it again later.
but, so just so you know what that'd say, you're honestly, and I'm not being
Okay, yeah.
facetious, it would say, do whatever you want. And we'll revisit this in the future, which I think would be a problem. Because the plan commission meetings did get a very fair, they had, like I said, the SCRs and the residents that didn't. So we know that, I know with this one, there's probably organized effort to have people send letters, but the residents haven't been heard on this one because it hasn't really been advertised. And I think you need to hear from both sides before you go that far.
When you're talking about grandfathering, are you talking specific about some of these other issues with the STRs that are outside of?
I'm just saying, and just for any operating one, I think that we need to clean up this R2 issue, and I guess what really happened is we said you can do it, and then we found out that we couldn't just let them do it without that being going into perpetuity.
And the other R2 condos, some of them had been renting and the code never allowed them. So you have a lot of old ones that were renting and they're technically violations. Code change was a way to fix the violations or to help them. If I can just real quick, I don't know where we're going with this, but I do wanna just real quick, talk about on page 32 and 33. There was a comment that we were asking for too much, so I wanted to go through on the application and show you what we're asking that we didn't ask for before. So we are asking for floor plan. We never did ask for the floor plan before. And it is to see whether or not they're meeting, a couple things. Are they really putting them in bedrooms, or are they illegally converting spaces that would violate state code, which means the inspector should be out there making sure they're not violating health and safety standards.
I guess that's, I would like, is that our responsibility? I'm genuinely asking that question.
So we have a building inspector we contract with, and they should be getting permits if they're changing them. And because he then goes out there and makes sure that everything is to state code. There's nobody else that does that besides our inspector.
Okay.
Site plan, we request that right now. Photos of all four sides was a way to save staff time and money, so we don't have to run out there, because if we have to run out there and check that every year, we're gonna have to increase their fees. That was a way to keep their fees down, asking for a photo so we don't have to go out there. Copy of the most recorded deed to the property. If they don't supply it, we have to research it. That's gonna have to cost them. We found that so we had the code, it was a test year. Let's see how it goes. You're having people apply for stuff that they're not even the people on the deed. That's not legal. So what we do right now is Heidi will run down and pick up deeds or research them. It'd be much easier if they could just give us a copy of their deed. They have it. But if they want us to research it, we can. We don't have to put it on the application, but that fee has to be covered somewhere. So that pushes up their fee. So again, it was a way to keep their fee down. Registered agent, we asked for that already right now. The insurance is something new, and that was, a legal thing that we, actually quite a few areas on some legal documents we read had said that you should make sure they have proof of insurance. And then that's also, if you noticed in your Bailey's Harbor example, that's the trend, make sure they have insurance. Current copy of the Door County Tourism Zone Commission permit. That's what we ask for now. Valid Wisconsin Tourist Rooming House license. That's what we ask for now. Copy of the inspection report. That's what we ask for now. The thing where it goes further though is if it hasn't been inspected within the 3 years, like the state is supposed to, at that time, then you'd have to have an inspector.
Shouldn't we just leave that up to the state? Do we have to do their job? I mean, can we?
We could not do it. I question the liability on that, but I mean, that's up to the board. I mean, in my mind, if the state isn't checking it out, and we're aware that the state hasn't been able to, and we're allowing these to be licensed, I'm issuing you a license, but I know you may not be in compliance. Does that put the village in a liability position? We like to err on the side of caution and protect the village.
And did this say that after 36 months, they had to do it annually? That said something like.
Yes. Mhm.
And why not every 36 months?
Because it's annually until the state can get back out there and do their 36-month inspection.
My business is inspected annually.
So are the
Hotels are inspected annually.
Restaurants.
They're way behind,
Yeah,
even on restaurants, way behind.
They
So-
won't hire enough people.
documentation, the dwelling has been tested for radon. That is something new, and that's because that has become a bigger and bigger issue here, and we're reading more and more about it. That's not something that DAC checks for. So,
Is that
Will it-
our?
Do we,
Yeah. Will it
Again,
harm
if-
people for 3 nights? I mean, will it be harmful for 3 nights if somebody stays in a place with a little light on?
well, that's,
Really?
That's-
Allison, a
is-
little radon?
I mean,
Is-
it's natural.
you
like,
have to put their
oh,
safety
yeah.
first, you're a host.
But
Again,
That's-
it's something you could take out.
But,
Again,
yeah,
right, right here.
Is it our, that's where I'm like, is this our responsibility? Cause I'm going back to the very beginning of our conversation around our resources. I mean, our village resources and that's what I'm struggling with a little bit of just some of these requirements.
yeah, and I think it's a call. Do we want to take knowing that there's a radon issue out there? Do we do nothing? Or does that put us in a liability position because we're licensing them?
Or is this
That's
a
a big call.
recommendation? It's a recommendation, go get this done. We're trusting you to get
Yeah.
it done and you are liable, and
Like,
that's
okay,
part
like
of our
some
contract.
recommendations. We recommend you get short-term rental insurance. We recommend you do a radon.
And then
test.
a liability policy on that.
can we make them sign something that says they saw this,
Yeah.
and they're disregarding it anyway. If that's the place, it means,
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. Do you know how many people have lied? Flat out lied on their applications? And we're gonna trust them to say, okay, yeah, I'll go do it.
I just said
I
they're
don't,
aware,
but
it
that's
takes
where
the
I'm like, and I
responsibility
think
to
that's
do it.
so great that
I know what you're gonna say,
okay.
but are we big brothering a little bit here is, that's all,
Like,
like,
I can take it, I can leave it, it's
Okay.
for discussion, but,
do we absolutely have to have it? I think is the
No.
question.
no.
And that's
Yeah,
what
like,
we're
I
asking
think
about everything under,
Could we
do
do
we absolutely have to have this? If we have to
Yeah.
have it to do what our commissioner, our goal is, then have it. If we don't absolutely have to have it, let's get it out of here. Because,
well, and
I mean, I went to visit Julie on a Saturday and she's there on a Saturday and she's sitting with like
Right.
3 massive stacks of
Right.
applications. She's not making that part up.
Well, and I would argue that we're like, part of our job is to also use our resources wisely, right? I mean,
and make them supply it so I don't have to dig for it.
Well, you don't even need to care about that though.
It's not on the radon.
Right.
But the deeds. and stuff, so.
Yeah.
If it's on a pouch, that's in the current code. Proof of contract for refuse and recycling, that's in the current code. Copy of the property rules, that's in the current code. And then signing that they acknowledge the license or the rules, the code. So when you look at that, there's really not that much that's new. And believe it or not, this isn't the hard part that they struggle with. I wish I had some applications here. The hard part is they struggle with the renewal when you're asking them for 4 things and they can't give you 4 things. So it's not the initial application that they struggle with, it's the renewal.
So this is only one time.
This is their,
This isn't the renewal application also. They don't need all this information.
what they would do is when they, because right now we call it a renewal in the code, but that's really not right because it's every year's a new
The
license.
application.
So what they would have to do is on some of this stuff, they'd have to re-verify it. So what we're finding is the agents are changing. People aren't telling us. The agents are telling us that they changed on some of them. So some of it you do ask them and you do want them to re-verify because you're checking the database.
So the agent, I feel like we could do through a county. I don't think we have to limit it to. I know we wanted to give jobs further north, but sometimes that's just not feasible.
And so I think that there's an interesting analogy was given to me, talking about the agent of the proximity. In terms of a standard hotel versus a short-term rental. If you're at a hotel and there's a problem, you go to the manager and they go deal with it. For a short-term rental, you go and you have a problem, you either reach out to, you know, the village, and then they reach out to the agent and all that. So there's a certain element that we do need to make sure they're close. I think we could expand it beyond where it is, where it's referenced here, but I don't think Door County is close enough.
I mean, Sturgeon Bay.
I would say the canal is where my head's at.
Else,
Yeah, the point is you want to have them local so that they can take care of their guests if there's problems. You don't want the host to be in Chicago.
Oh, no, I totally agree.
Yeah,
But I
you
thought
know,
we were a little
funky.
too narrow with not even Egg Harbor on here.
Is the goal of this to make sure that people have local jobs? Is that one of our goals that we want to have as part of this ordinance?
I mean, that's what we were saying. They wanted to keep them in winter. People were saying we want these to rent them in winter to support local jobs. But making the agents be not local is kind of contradicting that.
Well,
Well, I
that's
don't
why
think
I'm asking the board, like,
we
is
don't
that something you
have
want us to state?
Workers in the summer already. We don't have affordable housing for these workers, so we have to allow people to live further away.
I mean, I think I see what you're saying. I was gonna say, I think the concern before was, let people rent them year round so that they can provide jobs in winter. And so I understand, you're just talking about the agents.
Yeah, I'm
not
just talking about
jobs.
the agents. I feel like they could live a little.
So one of the
further away.
issues with the agents, just so you guys understand, is the neighbor gets that. So when there's a problem, the neighbor calls the agent and the agent is supposed to respond right
Wait, what do you mean? Say that
away.
If my
dog-
neighbor's making too much noise, I'm supposed to call the agent.
Yeah, you get, if you have a
Yeah.
short-term rental here,
Yeah.
you get a letter
And that's
from.
why you want them somewhat close, so they can respond to the complaint. That's why that's in.
When,
But I guess that's where, like, I'd like to, and maybe this was in here, sorry, this is a big packet.
well, one of the great things about the current STR ordinance. It really has been the biggest improvement is, you know, who's an STR and you've got a number to call. I mean, I've probably gotten four mailings from the village that say, this is now a short-term rental, this is a number to call. I personally haven't had issues with the STRs in my area. I've got one right next door to me. It's not been any problem for me, but I know that that's not the case for everybody, but that is something that is, and I did not appreciate how much of a benefit that would be.
Well, that's actually a really good point you're bringing up too. There are places where there are issues and there are places where there aren't issues. Is that what we're trying to address? Are the short-term rentals that are not helping our community or that are, you know, creating negative.
I think it's the rapid growth and the overtaking of the village and taking away affordable homes off the market. You know, they can't compete, you know, the average home buyer can't compete with someone who's an investor from out of state who can pay cash and bid it $100,000 over the market price.
I'm just not sure how much this is really gonna come back. I think that there is a huge issue with attainable housing, and I think that we should also remind everybody that the village has done some things for attainable housing. We got those 10 lots to the housing partnership.
They'll start building them in 25.
Yeah, and we've got this acreage out by the Wiltsey property. That's where we can really do something, to make a difference in that. That's where we have the chance to do it. There's other issues that we can address with the short-term rental, but I don't think that the affordable housing. It's a little piece of it, but it's not the driving force. I mean, if there's
all kinds of
smooth it out.
factors.
Yeah, so I think that if we can agree upon our goal, then we can probably come up to a better solution. What I think we should try and get to here. So just maybe a little bit of less pressure on the housing market from this, we can accomplish that. What else do we want to have there for goals on this?
What is our tipping point?
I feel like we need to curtail it, but by hurting those people who already have STRs is not beneficial.
What about the people who we're putting 22 people in a home? What do we do with where there's multiple beds in bedrooms? Now, I'm not talking about bunk beds or something like that. If you have a room and all the kids want to sleep together or whatever. But, you know, the numbers that I rattled off, and of course I didn't rattle off all the ones that, you know, 3-bedroom homes sleep 6, you know, there are a lot of those also. I brought to your attention the extremes. And so that's parking issues when everybody wants to drive themselves. I think that's way more than the neighbor bargained for when they thought, you know, when they were notified that an STR was going in. Yeah, every once in a while you will have, you know, a party at your own home, a graduation, a birthday, whatever. You invite your friends and your family and cars are parked everywhere. But how often does that happen?
And that's where you got me, Denise, and that's why I said, well, maybe we do need to have something on the existing as well, because some of those over the top, but where is that? We can figure out those details later on. We can just come with the most
But
basic thing.
I'm wondering, is there any desire to add something? I don't know what we're all gonna remove and change yet. But add something where if you have if you have anything over a 4-bedroom home, you get 2.5 people per bedroom and that's your max capacity. Or whatever, you know, 2.25, 2, I don't know, pick a number, we'd have to talk, do the math.
I think we could look at some examples too and see how that actually.
Is that a possibility? Because I
I
think,
think so, and I think on the application where you look at the floor plan and see how many people are sleeping per room. I think that's somewhere where I think come up with whatever is legally with the inspectors. There is a cubic footage per 400 cubic feet per adult.
yeah, but
200
even
per
if they
kid.
met that criteria, there's a couple of houses that are absolutely huge. 2 of them are pretty much built brand new specifically for STRs. That I found. Even if they meet that, is that what we want to promote?
No.
Well, that's
Okay.
where like I go back to flexibility, where for some people that is an option they're looking for and they won't find that in a hotel. And so to me, there's a little bit of, it's maybe not just 10% or whatever number we land on as being comfortable as our tipping point. It's also a variety of options. I mean, I think that's getting to part of the problem we're trying to solve that we kind of keep coming back to is, I think being creative, being able to maintain our flexibility in having multiple generational family reunions come to Door County, but also have adult-only options where you're, you know, able to escape without children. Like, I think that's part of what we're trying to create in Sister Bay. So I don't know what the criteria is gonna be yet, but I think being able to think through some of that, and I think that's something that we should be talking about as we think about the priorities for what we're trying to create. And putting criteria around it. I think that's really important.
If they wanted to have special events right now, like let's say you had let's say you cap it at 40 and they had their family reunion, they wanted to have 50 cars there. There is a venue through a special events permit that they could get. So they do have that option.
Okay.
So if you have stricter rules, there is that personalization.
Okay, that's helpful.
I also feel like the lot size is important. If it's a home down off by itself on a large 5-acre lot, they sleep 14 people, nobody sees their cars, I think that's fine. If it's in a neighborhood, sleeping 14, maybe that's not so appropriate.
One of the 22 was right downtown. In Sister Bay, not downtown proper, I should say north, but still in Sister Bay. On the water. So where do we find consensus to take the next step to have the next conversation?
Just thinking that, I'm not quite sure I mean, do we need to go back and think about this and then reconvene as a group? I do feel like we had some productive conversation tonight, but I think that there's a long way to go.
We see what comes out of the public hearing next week.
We can certainly do that. I don't
know, how much is it really gonna seem that's zoning?
I mean, the only thing that one should say the only thing. You know, because this is about the process. This is what you need to apply. The only thing that, I shouldn't say, again, not the only thing, but I think the big thing is the 7 day, the 100 days.
There's another thing we didn't touch on in here, that it cannot be a business. That is just silly for somebody to not put a STR in a LLC. So I don't see where we can tell somebody they can't protect themselves.
Well, as Denise said, they're not supposed to be businesses, though.
Well, Wisconsin statute says that they can be rented out and
What's our goal?
business can own a residence, so. Yeah, what is the goal?
What
I mean,
do we?
we're just going to hurt the owner, and if somebody wants to sue the STR, they can sue the LLC, get the house, and I mean, they're
Because
able to-
everybody says. Well, actually, not everybody, because there were a couple of emails where they actually did call it a business in their letter. But most correspondence that I have read over the months, they claim that it is not a business. If it's not a business, why do you have it in a corporation?
Liability. Liability.
Come on. This discussion is up here with the board.
I mean,
What does that really do for us though to, like, how does that, we're going to make people, like, is it going to deter short-term rentals? I guess I still don't follow what
No, I
benefit it's
don't.
gonna have for the village.
No, I wouldn't say that. That would deter, no.
How does it benefit the, like,
I think it's making it compliant with the state. Again, if the state is saying these are not businesses. And we want to protect our neighborhoods, make it very clear they're not business.
I think that's, I
so I mean, like,
agree with that.
Yeah, we're like crossing over into territory. I feel like that's not our responsibility.
I think that also is gonna open this up to a legal challenge, and we're gonna have a legal challenge on this more than likely anyway, so I don't wanna say that. that should deter us if it's something that's really worthwhile. I just don't see this having any benefit for the village while opening up another legal angle at this.
I agree.
I don't, if there was some, I hear what you're saying, it's, really, the state has said. These aren't businesses, they shouldn't be regulated as businesses. So they have these restrictions on them because they're not businesses, so we're saying, okay, you're not businesses, so don't be an LLC, like. That doesn't really, it doesn't really win us anything if they're not an LLC, it's like, it doesn't advance our cause at all, so I. Can we agree to pull that out? We have consensus on that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Another one that kind of got me was an operator may hold only one Village of Sister Bay short-term rental license at a time. I know some people hold more than one, and say you want to bought 2 cottages, one for your kids and one for yourself, one for your grandkids, one for yourself. And again, some of these might be people just protecting properties, not building grand homes. Like, okay, if you're knocking down places and building giant STRs, I don't agree with that, but if you're just helping preserve the neighborhood and getting your kids up here and your grandkids and friends and family, and you bought a tiny home and you want another tiny little home. I mean, a lot of these homes are kind of small. I see that should be all right.
So where I could see this going among us, and I don't know how firm our legal ground is to stand on, is in the United States, there is a lot of corporations buying housing stock, and they are taking over entire cities and neighborhoods and cities. I don't know if we can do it, but I could see that as being the benefit of not having more than X number of licenses. Is that 1? Maybe. Is that 2? Maybe.
But see, I thought about that also, Nate, and if you get rid of the LLCs or the corporations, you just have a different corporate name for every single property that you own. So you solved nothing. You haven't gotten around that angle. I've read those articles also.
It has turned out to be a little.
That's why I really, I thought if it's not a business, it shouldn't be a corporation. You own it yourself. If you want to live and retire here someday, I mean, I own a home. I own a business with my sister. My business is in a corporation with her. My home is owned personally. I have an umbrella, an extra additional insurance if somebody were to slip and fall at my house.
So is that protection worth the additional? I mean, like, after just saying, well, let's pull this LLC requirement up, that is a very real benefit of having the LLC requirement. That is something that does.
I was just going along with the group. I know things, I'd like to see it stay
I'm changing
in.
my mind based on the facts at hand.
Yeah.
Although the attorney for the Realtors Association said that it does violate state statute because
Hold on,
every
I would-
residence is supposed to
I
be
would
allowed to be rented.
Caution you on taking any
I agree.
other attorney's advice.
But doesn't that make sense that every residence is allowed to be rented? So how can you say you can't rent both? Not
The
an
state
attorney, but
statute says that if you have a residence, you have a renter.
supposedly, I mean,
That's a fair point.
I
I don't know that we're gonna be able to stop that one. I don't know how we can curtail that. That's a very real concern I have, and I don't want to see some corporation come in here and buy a whole lot of housing stock and take over
me neither.
the village.
You have I shouldn't say a lot, offhand, I can think of 4 of them that own at least 2 properties each.
I mean, to me, that is not necessarily, oh, I love Sister Bay. I've been coming up here forever. My grandparents and parents brought me up here. You know, I want to retire here, some year. We came across this property. We love it. We're going to rent it out until we can get here. And I understand those stories. But now when you own 2 or more, I don't buy that as much.
Can we reasonably stop that?
I have no idea.
Well, you're allowing residential in a business in a residential district. We don't allow At that point, has it now crossed from renting your home to operating a business in a residential district? The only way you can rent a bit, operate. The only way you can operate a business in a residential district is if it's a household occupation, which means it has to be occurring out of your home at the time of residency. Which they're not, unless you make them owner occupied, but I think everybody agrees that's not.
Well, is that a way to do it? I haven't thought through this enough, but we have a ordinance, or what do we call this, policy around if it's, Denise, what you were talking about, you know, you love the community, you're here, you have your one or maybe two properties, you're doing short-term rentals. And then if you're operating as a business, we figure out what that line is. There's a lot here that we have to unpack. We figure out what that line is, and maybe then to help solve some of the grandfathering, there's different oversight based on if it's running as a business, short-term rentals versus running short-term rentals as a residential dwelling.
I see where you're going with
Yeah,
that. I kind of like it.
There's a lot that we
Yeah.
have to unpack there,
Yeah.
and legally and all of the requirements, but maybe that would help get at some of what we're trying to, we don't want the corporations coming in.
Right.
So then we would,
So there's a lot of detail. I don't know any of the detail. We'd have to.
I think that's a great thing for us to explore. I think that.
I mean,
Right away, I'm thinking, well, the business is more than the 180 days.
Well,
And that's not what people only get beyond that regulation, but that's what the state has told us. Once you go over 180 days, you're a business.
Right, and maybe for those, that is how we would need them to be operated.
As a home occupation.
Yeah, I mean, or the 100, they would have restrictions around 180 days or whatever, 7 days.
I think too, and it's not this code, but the other one, when you're in a business district, you expect a business to be there. I think that you'll I don't know, but I'm guessing the planning commission might look at those different, say, yeah, this is where businesses should go. They should have different rules than the residents, if you follow that mindset.
Right, and I have thought about that, and if you are in B1, B2, or B3. That it would be, my opinion, only one person on the plan commission that would think that is where. You have your density, your commercial entities, whatever that may be, and that in those zones. It would be okay to operate and none of this would apply to any of that. The same as when Julie and I were talking about an email and about old resorts and cottages. They were never homes that people inhabited. And their purpose and their original intent was always to be rented. And that's what the shoreline was many years ago. So I think that's also another exception to the rule that I'll bring up at the planning commission. That, as we bob and weave through this, that, the tweaking will happen.
The real issue, Sarah, you had said it earlier, is there certain areas that are a problem? The real issue that we see in the office and that we hear the complaints on is the detached single family residence. It's the home in the R1 zone. That's really the crux of the problem.
So are more resources required, like police or garbage, or, are there more
Staff,
more taxing on the?
on the community as a whole, there's more people on the roads. There are more people in the parks. There are more people in our restaurants, and people hate that, we had an old board member who decided not to run and is not here any longer. who said he hated that he had to wait an hour and a half to eat somewhere in the summer because there were just too many people. His opinion, many people feel that way. Other people feel the more the merrier, the more jam-packed it is, the better. But again, can our sewer and water plant handle it? Yes, we're okay. With that, we can grow and expand quite a bit before we ever have to worry about that type of infrastructure, but we just did a $5 million upgrade too. So yeah, there are other impacts, just the more and more people that
I think
that
there's
wanna
some
be
real
here.
strain on your parks department too.
I mean, I think what staff has found that they're going through is all consuming. It is, now granted, yes, it's a lot about what we're talking about tonight and what the Plan Commission will be having a public hearing on next week. And once a decision is made, what we want to move forward, hopefully a lot of the phone calls will drop off, but staff's pretty much getting nothing else done right now. And that's a problem.
Well,
That's a
I
big
mean,
problem.
That goes a little bit, Ally, I think you were bringing this up on the 8% tax, I mean, it's a separate issue, but where it's like, are funds flow matching where resources are needed? And if people are utilizing, there's this influx of visitors using our parks, with all things we want, using our restaurants, using sidewalks. Is there a way to make sure the funds flow, and maybe this is what we'll talk to Julie about when she presents, matching, those resource needs and
And I'd rather more money came back to the
the
villages
village.
than going to
Yeah.
marketing.
Yeah.
And that's
Right.
right. I see this disconnect. We're saying we don't want these STRs, yet we have this 8% room tax.
Yeah.
And we're asking more people to come. And I feel like we're.
Yeah.
I think
Are
that we
you a
can get-
member of the Door County?
Destination Dark County?
Thank you.
They've changed their name so many times.
I know.
I don't know that much about it.
Okay, because they have shifted.
I know
And
they gave
and
that
it's more about management and green and giving back to the communities. It's not all about
Bringing people.
come. They're aware now to a certain extent. Do you have to do some marketing so some people don't forget about you? Yeah, you don't want to drop off necessarily the face of the earth. But they have shifted.
I just looked at the pie chart on their website and where they said that how they allocate their funds and so.
I would encourage you to hold off on that until you give
Yes,
Julie
I-
a chance, because she's gonna give us a lot of good information, and I do know that there's
Mm-hmm.
a number of ways that the village can get money back, and I think we probably will in the near future, get money back through some of the grant application programs and the like.
Oh, that'll be good, because yes, I think we have a lot of people.
So this is a really important conversation. I am looking at the time. Are we?
Are we going to get anything more accomplished by keeping going? I guess is the
Yeah.
question. What is the next step on this? We just,
We clearly need to look into this a lot further and
Okay.
prioritize our goal. to achieve.
How
Agree.
can Julie? You make a spreadsheet. About. The issues. That are in this document. And. We all get that spreadsheet. And it's like, can we, and everybody, individual person on this board fills it out.
make it live so we can all look at it together. We each get a row and we'll fill in our row. And we can see it all together. Because we've
And so
done that.
we'll know we have consensus and know where we're farther apart to help us.
I like that idea. On the spreadsheet, can we add what the goal of each of the items are? Yeah, because I feel like I wanna understand
Yeah, because
why we're proposing some of these.
it's very easy to come up with problems. I can think of many right now. I think the hardest part is to come up with the goals and the purpose, yeah, those goals and how we're gonna solve them. We can come up with many problems right now. So, yeah, I think the main thing right now is to set those goals based on.
So I just want to be clear. Because we have to get those licenses. Okay, so there's not a lot of time to invest in this. So. I'm hearing two different things. We want to know what the goals are. Or we want to put what we don't like and offer solutions.
How about, I think Sarah had wanted for each item, what was the goal of that item?
Yes.
Maybe we just need, what is our goal, period?
Okay.
List the items and you can determine whether or not it meets your goal.
Okay. I'm good with that.
Or the goal of the statement that's written on there. I mean, I think we know what the kind of the goal is. We just haven't come up with the right wording.
If there is anything, like, there's, the operator is to ensure the pets are current on their vaccinations. If we have other little things, can we add them to the spreadsheet, things we haven't discussed? That just seems onerous on the. Like,
How are we gonna
That
make-
was in the old one, that was discussed pretty heavy last
that
year.
seems pretty different. Like, people don't also have their vaccinations right before vacation, and then how is the owner gonna like go back to these people and be like, okay, I don't know, that one seemed difficult. I didn't know if we could add two of those things, we can discuss it all later, on the spreadsheet. If there's anything we hadn't talked about that is not on the spreadsheet.
Yeah,
Would
we
be in
should talk
space
about
to
it.
add.
We should bring those up, like maybe in other.
Oh, that's what I'm
issues.
saying, we don't have to talk right now, but if we
Yeah.
see something as we review this that isn't on the spreadsheet, can we add it?
Well, I would say if we haven't talked about something that you feel strongly about like that, just send Julie an email so it's incorporated right
That's-
away.
Okay, will do.
So if everybody wants to have their additions to me by Friday,
Mhm.
and then I'll do the spreadsheet next week.
Thank you.
We'll do it that way, and then have that go back and forth. I mean, it won't be in time for the public hearing, but you might have more ideas after the public hearing.
So the public will inspire us. And just so everybody out there can understand, I did not want to take public comment on this because I wanted there to be this board discussion. There's a lot of us for us to work out. I'm not trying to curtail public input. There's plenty of time for that. But we need to work it out between ourselves. Okay, I think motion to adjourn would be in order. Motion by Roscoe, second by
Yeah.
White, all those in favor?
Bye.
When is the next village board meeting?
That is
June 20th.